My name is Jennifer Webster. I am a deputy marshal. I'm located out of the Salem office, and this is your presentation about personal safety and security. The last time that we came and taught this class, we being the marshals, was about 2016. Was anybody in that class? Okay. So the information for you guys is not going to be anything probably out of the ordinary. We kind of, each instructor puts their own little flair on it. We'll have some new data, new statistics, but I think for the most part it might be pretty similar. But it's really great because anytime I teach this class or I'm involved in it, we usually have people afterwards and they're like super safety conscious and they're always looking for safety and danger, and I love it because I love safety. So when we do these classes, it's great, and then as time goes on, it kind of peters out and people, get back into whatever complacency or whatever kind of zone that they're in. So I do think there is value for people that have had it, and it's always a great refresher. The high volume core, I'm glad you guys are here because we've had several discussions in previous classes. This is obviously my second day here. We also have a Friday class as well about like maybe some tips or some information that we can give you. Hopefully we can instrument some kind of change because I know you guys deal with a lot of stuff. I'm not saying that just the high volume does. I think you all do it collectively, but it's great to have you all here. With that being said, I know that you were mandatory to be here, but regardless, welcome, and here we go. So personal safety and security. This is going to be a very PowerPoint presentation-driven class. I say that because I know you guys don't want to listen to me for the next 4 hours, and I don't even want to listen to my own voice for the next 4 hours. So the interactions, I'm going to try to engage you. I know this is like after lunch class, and usually my after lunch classes are a little like, so sleepy, I don't know what it is, but I think we're going to get a lot if we stay engaged and you guys have maybe some solutions that have worked for you that might be able to help some of your other coworkers. So there's that. Here's me. I always like to say, like, who the heck is this person, giving me all this advice on safety. So I've only been with OJD for a year now as a marshal. Did anybody know that OJD had police officers amongst their organization? I see a couple of heads, yes. Did anybody have no clue that law enforcement for OJD existed? Okay, great. There's usually a couple of them that are like, I have no idea. So for the ones that knew that we existed, do you know what functions or what we do? One of them, spoiler alert, is I'm right here. So maybe training. Yeah.
Judicial, staff security, building security, evaluation.
Everbridge.
Right.
Excellent. Those are all the great things that we do. Yes. Anybody else? So how we kind of formulated was Chief Dominguez. He essentially read some statute, and he said that essentially he was entitled to a protection unit, much like what the governor has for her group. I say her because obviously it's a governor, female right now. And so we provide the dignitary protection for that. So Chief Dominguez says, yes, I'm entitled to this protection and I would like it. So they formulated a state deputy marshal. There's 4 of us that are sworn police officers, 2 other that are not police officers that make up our office. And we do a lot of those functions, and we'll talk about some of those. But so like I said, I haven't been with OJD for very long, just a little bit over a year. How it started and how I got familiar with OJD is my work as a trooper. So I got hired on with OSP in 2008. Just like with most police agencies, you start at the road, and that's what I did. My experience has been primarily in Salem. And then after that, I worked at the Capitol, and then the Capitol is really where I actually got to know OJD because our buildings are really close next to each other. And then after working at the Capitol for about 7 years, I went on to become a detective with our major crimes. And then about 15 years made the transition over here to OJD. 10 of those years I was involved in our SWAT team as a crisis negotiator. and spent the end of my time there as the team leader for that team. So my background is in crisis intervention, crisis training, things like that. And then being a trooper, I did a lot of classes for in terms of like personal safety and security for other state employees. So that's a little bit about my background. I like to call those my trooper days, and then these are my lady marshal days. So I'm still learning what my job is because it is a very unique role. When I obviously knew some of the people, so I knew what a lady marshal or a marshal was and what they did, but it is very different. I always like to joke and say, usually when people think of the marshals, they think of like the U.S. marshals, like the cool ones. I try to say, well, I'm not that cool, you know. I'm like the state marshals. We do things a little bit differently. So yeah, my primary roles and responsibility are very different. So we do a lot of threat assessment. Deputy Yandel, Levi Yandel, is a deputy that works here. I work pretty close with him, and we do a lot of threat assessment stuff, and that's kind of also where my background lies in threat assessment. And then we also do training. Obviously, that's why I'm here. We do dignitary protection. So anytime the Supreme Court of Oregon or the Court of Appeals travels or does big cases and hearings and stuff like that, the marshals will go out there and provide that protection piece for them. We do Everbridge, ID badges. We do some court security projects. We also do vulnerability assessments. So essentially what a vulnerability assessment is taking a building or a house or a residence and just identifying what's vulnerable about it for people to like just be a little bit more safety in mind, especially if we have like a threat with, let's for example, say like a judge has a threat that's going on. We have that service that we can provide somebody to go out there and to look at their house and say, hey, you know, cut that bush down, put a light here, some other safety things. And we've done it for OJD employees too. We've had a couple OJD employees that were had a stalking order, and it was because of their position that they had that. So there are some other things that we do behind the scenes, and we obviously do a lot more. So deputy marshal, my role is not to go out there, make traffic stops, arrest people. In terms of that, it's very different. So that's in a nutshell what I do, but I also do a lot of other things. This is just to show you that we have two shelters. They are part of our emergency response team. We have a shelter or trailer in Salem, and we also have one in Bend. So for example, like this looks like a bouncy house, and I sometimes say that, though I was told not to, but this is a airframe shelter. So essentially, if we have a courthouse that goes down for a number of reasons or a variety of reasons, whether it's man or person made, or if it's weather related, we'll bring these temporary shelters out so that the business continuity can still continue. So we can still do those arraignments, things like that, provide something very temporary until we can find a more permanent solution. The best example that I can give you here is Baker County Courthouse. They had some pipes that burst during the winter several years ago, and obviously their courthouse was not able to be used, so they had a shelter come in until they could find another more permanent structure. Okay, I told you there was going to be participation. I'm telling you, it'll make this class go by better, at least. More tolerable, how about that? So what do you guys expect to receive from this class? Credit that you have arrived, which obviously was given. So yes, check. You did the hardest thing. You showed up.
Tips on dealing with safety.
Excellent. Hopefully I can provide those for you. At least make you more safety aware, and then we could talk about some things that you guys do probably on a daily basis, and because a lot of you guys have a lot of ideas that I think are great. So here's where I like to share them because it offers maybe some avenues for people to approach if they're in a similar situation. What about anything else?
Last time I attended, they talked about active shooter thing, and that was the first time I'd been exposed to that. So
excellent. Okay.
maybe there's some update on that, or
Yeah, we will talk about active threats, active shooter. A lot of times you'll hear active shooter, and we're trying to get away from that terminology. I personally am trying to get away from that terminology just because you can do the similar things in any kind of active threat. Obviously we know it's not always shooting, could be stabbing, could be a vehicle assault, could be explosive. So we like to say active threat. So hopefully we'll get you some new data. The good news is basically like the nuts and bolts of it have not changed. The run, hide, fight is still what we teach. And I think that it's something that's obviously taught nationwide. So it's still being utilized as a successful way to try to win and what could be sometimes viewed as an unwinnable situation.
Hey, I learned something. I can leave, right?
Well, I mean, she did say that you were
Active
here,
threat,
so.
Yes.
Yes, we can all go home now. And what I would, now that we're talking about the active threat stuff, we have a variety of experience. We have a variety of different experiences here, different tolerances for things. So my goal and intention is not to offend anybody. In fact, if anybody that I like to pick on is usually myself. But we do talk about some sensitive topics. I don't know what you guys have and what you guys have experienced in your life, but there's a lot of people that have experienced some trauma. And unfortunately, we live in a time where it's very, very rare to encounter somebody that has been involved in an active threat situation. And now it's not so uncommon anymore. And that's the reality. But hopefully we can give you some tools to succeed in that. With that being said, if there's something that is traumatizing, there's nothing in here in my presentation that's going to be really gross or very detrimental. I try to leave that stuff out. I mean, we've all seen it. So I'm really not trying to do that. But if there's a topic or something that happens and if you guys need to leave, then by all means, if you need to leave for those reasons, please do so. But again, I'm not gonna share anything that's gonna be, I don't think, too crazy, but I'll let you guys be the judge of that. Okay? So some of these things are going to be just stuff you already know. So we're going to go through some a little bit faster than we go through others. But I will always take time to answer questions, talk about things as a group as much time as we have. So if you guys have a question, I like to kind of deal with it as we go through. So just raise your hand, shout it out, whatever you need to. Okay. So I know this is very simple and you're like, why is she telling me what a customer is? I know what a customer is. I deal with customers every day. There's a point to this. There's a method to my madness. Obviously, this is what Oxford Dictionary describes what a customer is, but what are the type of customers that you guys deal with here at the courthouse and working with OJD? Just name some customers.
Generically, you've got in custody or out of custody.
In custody.
Do gross definitions of our custody.
Excellent. So you have people that are in custody and people that are out of custody. Yes. What about anybody else? Any other customers we have here? Great. Yeah, we have a lot of attorneys that work here. Those are our customers as well. What about, and somebody said it in the class this morning, I thought it was great. What about other employees? Are they our customers? Yeah, there's so many divisions and so many things that, like that go on that you guys work together and you need information that the other one has. So absolutely, just us as employees can be customers as well. Of course, to our IT folks that do all that as well. So I put this slide on here for a couple different reasons, but I usually say, hey, out of these three people here, who do you think is the most dangerous person? And some of you might recognize some of these people and you'll be like, yeah, that one person is dangerous or, whatever, because I have their background and I know them. But what do you guys think?
Guy, of course.
The guy that's frowning. Okay. Is that the middle guy? Oh, okay. The guy with the bow tie? Yeah, because you recognize him, right? You don't recognize him. Interesting. Okay. Does anybody recognize that guy? Yeah, Ted Bundy. Yeah.
Susan?
What?
Is that Susan, the woman?
No, it's not. But give me a little bit more background because you might just be confused on the name.
And that her husband hired to murder her.
Nancy Brophy.
Oh, Nancy.
That, yes.
Yes.
No, not, oh, you're thinking of somebody else?
That was in our course.
So Nancy Brophy did come to the Multnomah County Courthouse. She was obviously convicted here just a little bit ago. Yeah, that's Nancy Brophy. So usually when I do this class, they'll say, is it too loud?
I have no idea who you're talking
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. I'm like, oh, is that too loud? Sorry. So we say this, I usually say like, who's the most dangerous up here? So Nancy Brophy, the gal on the left, was an author, has been an author for a number of years, and she wrote like a story on how to kill your husband. And then fast forward it, her husband dies, and it's almost identical to essentially her novel. There's a lot of other details. I'm giving you the cliff notes here. But she was convicted of murder. So yes, that's Nancy Brophy. I think just within the last year or so.
Yeah, last summer sometime, like
Yeah.
July or August.
The person in the middle is David Pedersen. He is the guy that was in a number of years ago was in Washington. He had murdered his dad and stepmom, fled to Oregon. They murdered Cody Myers, a college student out of Newport, and then fled down to California where they killed another guy and was apprehended. Their crimes were hate related. So that's him. My point of this is one, just to put people, obviously I put those people in there because they're all dangerous or they can all be dangerous, but that's my point, is we can't look at what somebody looks like, because usually when I do it, they're like, that person in the middle, he looks very dangerous. And that's not to say that he wasn't dangerous, because obviously I gave you his background, you guys know that. But to say we can't look at somebody and say they're dangerous. Now, I know that there's some things that we can look on, and usually we're right, but they're coupled with other things. So what we have to do is we have to look at what people are doing, their mannerisms, their actions, things like that. We can't just look at somebody and say, oh yeah, that person's going to be dangerous, even though there are some people that see somebody and they're like, that person is dangerous, and the hair on the back of your neck stands up. And you should really listen to those things that your body is trying to tell you, because usually they're trying to tell you for something, for a certain reason. You just might not know what that reason is. But anybody could be dangerous, right? It's just their actions. That's what we want to pay attention to. So this slide is just supposed to signify what we all fear of losing is what our customers fear losing, and is what people that go out there and commit violence fear losing. Now, we'll talk about it later. I'm not saying that some of these things that people lose is going to be automatically they're going to commit violence, because there are things on this chart that I have lost myself, and that didn't led me to commit any kind of violence. But what I'm saying here is, when I came over from the state police and I came to the courts, and I really had like an aha moment. I don't know why. I mean, I obviously worked in the courts, testified, and did all that kind of jazz, so I was very familiar with it. But my aha moment was like, oh man, like all of these things that we value so much as a society, it gets decided in a courtroom. Like all of these inhibitors is what I like to call them, that people value, whether it's perceived or actually, can be removed from somebody. And when we start removing all these positive things in people's lives, some people do negative things because they don't have any kind of coping mechanisms. They don't have that support system that some of us have that keep us on the straight and narrow when we lose a lot of these inhibitors. So, I mean, if you think about it in just a court sense, I mean, all these things to me is really what the court can do based off of obviously a legal process. So if you think about, for example, family, I mean, what do you guys think about in terms of like court? Like what are kind of cases that we're seeing where people are losing their family in a court setting? Custody, yep.
Juvenile.
Yep, juvenile, yep. What about criminal cases in terms of like child neglect and things like that. Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of these things, obviously, time. I mean, just being a juror and coming, having to report here, and or going through the court process. I mean, that is time. So I think we just have to remember everything and kind of what we signify. I think that's why we get some of the customers that we do get is because I can't tell you anybody that likes to go to court. I mean, do you guys know of anybody that likes to go to the courthouse? And sometimes they're even employees. Anybody?
People come get married.
Okay, yes. Adoption. I've heard adoptions and marriages. I've also heard divorces, ironically.
There's name and sex change as well.
Oh, yeah.
Excellent. Yes, those are things that usually have a lot of joy or not a lot of negative. But what's more? Is it like the negative ones or the positive ones? Yeah. Okay. So when we're identifying somebody that's difficult, obviously you can read what I have up here on the left. Some are laughing because they recognize that gal from a very classic movie, I might add. But so identifying difficult customers, you guys can read the slide, and I know that these are just general things. I'm not saying that one of these things are isolated. That's going to make somebody difficult. But what are some of the things that you guys have seen where you're like instantly, I know this person is going to be difficult? Anybody?
Stiff body language.
Body language. Body language is great. That's why I want you guys to be experts at reading people and reading their body language. We already know that communication about verbal is very small, but the nonverbal is huge. So really want you guys to pay attention to that. So body language is great in trying to decide maybe or determine if somebody's going to be angry, difficult, hostile. What about some other things?
Interrupts.
Excellent. And what about that? It makes it difficult for you to deal with that person.
It's though they aren't even digesting what you're trying to tell them.
Yeah, so constant interruption. They're not listening to what you're said. Some other employees say that the conversation is very circular and you just go round and round and round, which is a lot. I mean, there are a lot of conversations that happen with people that are very much like that. I mean, I've had them. Great. Those are great examples. Anybody else? When you're just like, I know this person is going to be a pain. And this is what I've seen before. What about if I were to tell you, law enforcement, we like to call them frequent flyers. Okay, do you guys have frequent customers that show up that have a certain reputation, let's just say, and they are difficult 10 times out of 10 times? And hopefully you're sharing this information with your coworkers, or you guys already know because they've also dealt with them. What about just somebody that you have a relationship with, whether it's good or bad, and you know when that person comes up that they're automatically going to be difficult? Yes, I think that is also great in terms of like when somebody's going to be difficult because that person is difficult all the time. What about sovereign citizens?
Yeah.
Nobody said sovereign citizens, which I was a little shocked at.
In person in a really long time though.
Been a while,
We
yeah.
get their filings all the time, but
Right.
I haven't seen.
Are they difficult to deal with, or can they be
Yes.
difficult to deal with?
Yeah.
Because they think they know the law.
Yeah, they think they know the law, and they don't recognize the actual law. That could be very difficult to navigate, especially in a government organization, where this is the process that we have to follow. And if they don't recognize that process, it's almost going to be difficult. In my experience in dealing with somebody that's sovereign. I'm not saying that person's violent or has violent tendencies or anything like that, but those people can be very difficult.
Some of them have been.
And some of them do. Yes.
Becoming.
Yes, that's correct.
Yep.
I've also heard that name. Like, hey, how can you identify a difficult person? And they're like, oh, Richard. I was like, yeah.
He had a mustache like this. It's like, oh yeah, you're weird. Okay. And then you talk to him, and it's like, oh yeah, you're really weird.
Oh yeah, and you will not get out of that conversation. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, and he'll leave you voicemail messages after voicemail messages.
Hopefully he never had to call but he came in all the time in the records department. When I
Like,
worked there.
if you want to be really like mean, and law enforcement, we did this. I'm not condoning it or telling you to do it. We would do like our supervisors. We'd be like, Richard, go ahead and call my supervisor. Here's his card.
Yeah,
You know, you just got to keep your, just kidding. You know, keep your
we
supervisor.
oftentimes, if he, we'd have to like swap out and get a supervisor or something.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's those are, you guys just demonstrated or just told me a lot about what you guys think could be difficult or a number of variety of reasons. And I go ahead.
Lady stance.
Great. So we talk about this in terms of law enforcement, but I think some of the other ones are pretty easy. Again, they're not isolated alone, like rapidly breathing. Like I was rapidly breathing when I was going up the steps today, you know, like it happens, right? So what blading a stance means is when you're talking to somebody and you're just having an interaction with them, and all of a sudden, a police use this a lot, but I think it's good for you guys to know about body language and in terms of attack or what could be perceived as attack or an indicator, is they go from like this and then they shift their weight like this. So what we like to call it is the fighting stance, because you're shifting all your weight to the back and you're kind of blading your body, minimizing in terms of a target. But if you're about to throw a punch, more your weight, boxers and stuff do it, is right here, so it's more effective. So they start blading. Again, it's not an end all be all, but if you're looking at some of those signs, and if people are like blading, I mean, I don't know if a lot of people do this anymore, but they're like taking their rings off, you know, maybe they're rolling up their sleeves, you know, that's probably a sign. Again, I don't think it's as noticeable, but sometimes people do surprise me on YouTube. So, okay, here we go. What is a difficult customer? Steve Martin is going to show us, just because I think there is value, but it's also pretty funny.
Oh, Jean Marie, you're a stitch. No, Mom's gonna do the turkey. Yeah, Dad wants ambrosia, so I guess we gotta get those miniature marshmallows. And I'll do the crescent rolls, and you do the cranberries. You know I can't cook. Oh. Yeah, well, I'll see you tomorrow then. Gobble, gobble. Oh, bye-bye. Welcome to Marathon. May I help you?
Yes.
How may I help you?
You can start by wiping that chirpy, perky smile off your rosy cheeks. Then you can give me an automobile. A Datsun, a Toyota, a Mustang, a Buick, 4 wheels and a seat.
I really don't care for the way you're speaking to me.
And I don't really care for the way your company left me in the middle of nowhere with keys to a car that isn't there. And I really didn't care to walk down a highway and across a runway to get back here to have you smile in my face. I want a car right now.
May I see your rental agreement?
I threw it away.
Oh, boy.
Oh boy, what?
You're screwed.
Yeah, she doesn't actually say that. This is the edited version of that. It was quite vulgar in language, but I think it's just a good example of what maybe somebody is angry, because obviously we can all see that it's supposed to be funny, but some people usually say like the lady's customer service like was not really on par, but you know, whatever. Yeah. Sometimes what you want to say is maybe what you shouldn't say, is what somebody always told me. Okay, so when you're dealing with somebody that's difficult, angry, hostile, that you think could potentially turn into where your safety is jeopardized or anything like that, there's some adages and some stuff that you guys can do. Again, it's going to be specific in the environment you work in. But generally, having time and distance is going to be your friend when it comes to some of these things. So, what do you guys think in terms of time? Like, why do you think time would be crucial if you're dealing with somebody? And there's a couple different schools of thought, but if you're dealing with somebody that's difficult, why do you think time could be advantageous for you?
Someone to come that can help you or time.
Absolutely. So those are two things for people that didn't hear. It's for time for somebody to calm down or to get more of a rational thought, and then also time for somebody to respond. So if you think there's always safety in numbers, having a backup is great. I know that some people here, in terms of they're dealing with somebody difficult, they'll usually get a supervisor to come or signal for somebody else to come. And maybe somebody's calling security or they're hitting the panic button, a number of ways. But yeah, time is going to be on your side for a couple different reasons, and you mentioned both of them. In terms of when I was a crisis negotiator and I would talk to somebody that was in whatever crisis that led them there, because crisis for one person is very different for another person. But when somebody's in such an elevated, such an emotional state, I could say whatever I want and they're not going to listen. They're not going to be able to comprehend anything that I say because they're so up there. It's such a high emotion. And really, through a lot of different skills and active listening, things like that, you really want to get somebody, just if they need to vent, let them vent. And then once they kind of get maybe a little bit lower, that's when you try to introduce maybe some rational thought or some ideas. Because when they're at heightened state, they're not going to be able to hear anything you're going to say, and they're definitely not going to do what you need them to do. So time is going to be a great of the essence for you for those two reasons. What about distance? I think distance is going to be, it's probably pretty obvious, but why do you think distance is going to be your friend in this situation if you're dealing with somebody that's truly angry or hostile?
Action time.
Yes.
So they can't grab a hold of you.
Excellent. You guys just answered my two crucial points. So in terms of reaction time, we'll talk about that. So is action or reaction faster?
Action.
Action, yes. Action is always going to be faster. So the example I like to use is if I'm going to hit somebody, and I'm not going to hit anybody, but if I was to hit somebody, I'm going to be able to hit that person faster than they can react, because being that recipient, being the person that's going to get hit, and again, it's seconds, but seconds count, is they have to recognize the threat. So if it's a punch, they have to recognize that I'm about to punch them by whatever means. They're blading their stance, they're balling up their fist, I actually physically see the punch. So I'm going to have to recognize that. It's going to send signals to my body that I'm going to have to do something. I'm going to have to move away. I'm going to have to block, defend. So action is always going to be faster than reaction. When we start talking about the run, hide, fight, this is the action versus reaction in this situation is going to be a hindrance to you, but the action versus reaction in the run, hide, fight is going to be something that's actually going to help you. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, but exactly right. So if you're talking to somebody, and again, I know if you're behind a glass or you're behind a wall, yeah, maybe you don't use distance unless that threat is presenting something that you think that maybe you do need distance. But if you're talking to somebody face to face, and we like to say the old adage is to have like an arm's distance in length between you and that person. I think it's close. Personally, law enforcement, we do a little bit greater, but again, it's going to be dependent on your space. And that's not to say that in our professions, we don't have to get close to people, because we do. But if you're getting some of those feelings and the indicators are going off, start creating some distance, start backing up. And what you're allowing you to do is to have more options to react. You're allowing you to have more time to process, because we know that action is faster than reaction. So it's going to give you a lot more options. It's also going to give you maybe some entrances, exits, things like that. But if I was talking to somebody and they were right here and I come up and I'm like, oh, I don't like how this is going. So I'm going to, kind of just talk, retreat backwards, kind of look over my shoulder, make sure I'm not running into anything. And then I'm going to move over here. What am I doing by kind of making this L movement here? I'm doing two things. One, I'm creating distance. Two,
Access,
Barrier.
creating a barrier. And somebody said it over here. Absolutely. And that's just you want to stack all the cards in your favor. When we start talking about these things, it's like time. Yep. Distance. Check. Barrier. It's just more obstacles and more things somebody has to go or to move through to try to get to you. So you want to stack as much as you can. Talk about being assertive and drawing attention, alerting staff members. There's a variety of ways that you can do that. I learned about a couple today that some working spaces have, but what do you guys think in terms of where you guys work? How could you alert somebody that you need help? Teams message? Yes, I have heard that. As a way to be like, hey, do you guys also use that for like getting a supervisor to come too? So same. Okay. Yes. Excellent. Anything else? Phone call? Who are you calling? Ghostbusters.
Depends on who we need. Security, usually.
Excellent. Yes.
In our office, raising our voice always draws attention.
Yes, excellent. And this is where you're going to have to know your working relationships with your own crew the best. Because I can tell you, when I was working on the road, and I could hear like my partner's voice, and my partner wasn't saying, hey, I need help over the radio, but I could tell in their voice. I worked with them so much that I was like, I'm going to start heading their way. So just kind of think of that. You do have to know each other. And sometimes it's like I could look at somebody and they're like, oh, she needs help. So you play to that advantage. So I think that's great. Some work groups have code words. Has anybody ever heard of any of that? Does that exist in any of your guys' environment? I see some shaking heads. You don't have to tell me what it is. I said pumpkin pie earlier. That's what I guessed, and they said it wasn't pumpkin pie.
Oh, in the jail, we say like 1234.
Okay.
When they're like mentally ill.
Okay, excellent. Excellent. Yeah, so codes, police also use those terminology in terms of like designating a code for just something that people are well versed in. So yeah. Anybody else? What about this one? Oh, go ahead.
Well, not in this building, but in the older building where it was more open, so everybody could hear you. I think we did have a question that was kind of a code for like, hey, can you be mindful that this may escalate?
Okay, excellent. Those are all great. And if you have code words and if you have things, the only thing I would say is practice on them. If you have new people that come into your unit, make sure they know and make sure they know what that means. For example, this group had a code word and I was like, well, what does that mean? Like me, if I hear that, like pumpkin pie, for example, that's not it. But if I hear that, what am I supposed to do as that person? So just make it very clear. Like, we want you to call security. We want you to call for a supervisor. But I think it's great. Knowing your working relationships and the people that you work with is really huge, and communicating, because there is safety in numbers. So what about this? Help me. Like, what about just actually asking for help? That also can alert your coworkers. Obviously, it alerts everybody else, and it's not covert. But if you truly need help, just blurt it out. And I asked Neil if I could do this, so I got his permission. But what about if you're dealing with somebody and say they're not threatening in terms of like your physical safety, but they are just acting like a jerk, or they are screaming and yelling and cursing, and you're just going round and around and around and around with this person. Do you guys think you have the authority to say something like this? Again, you need to be professional because we're professionals, but do you guys think you could say, sir, ma'am, they, whatever, I can no longer help you if you continue to act in this manner. Do you guys think that you guys have that authority? One, and do you use that? Two?
Yes.
Yes. Is it a daily basis?
Semi-daily.
Semi-daily. Excellent. Yes. If you didn't know that you could do that, and I think it does a couple different things. It let everybody knows around you. It lets your coworkers know, like, hey, she's dealing with somebody, because that's not normal, right? But a couple different things is some people just want to size you up. Okay, they want to see what they can get away with, and they'll try to size you up. And sometimes you have to be assertive. Again, professional but assertive. In police, we say draw a line in the sand. And so if they start to come over that, then that's when we need to act and we need to do something else. But essentially, you're establishing those boundaries. And if they play outside those boundaries, then something else has to happen. That could be a supervisor, that could be security, that could be additional help. Sometimes it's just being assertive and saying, don't talk to me like that. I'm not going to put up with this behavior. I can no longer do that. And sometimes people will go, okay, and they'll calm down. Sometimes you're never going to get somebody, obviously, to do any of those things. So then you have to have other resources. But you do have that power to do that. So I'm glad that you guys use that.
We've had several people who call on the phone that will get either argumentative, that don't listen, or start cussing at us. And we just tell them that if you continue to talk to us like that, we're going to hang up the phone. I think Judge Marshall's office does this where they tell the person, I'm going to count to 3, and if you don't stop talking, I'm going to hang up the phone. And then they count to 3 and doesn't stop talking, so they just hang up the phone. So we always like to tell our clerks in our office that if you have somebody on the phone who isn't respecting you and is talking to you like that, that you have the authority to hang up on them. They can calm down and call back if they need to.
Excellent. Yeah, and some people, like, they use the phone because they have a little bit more empowerment too. You know, like, I'm just going to tell this person off, and it's not a face-to-face contact. So sometimes they'll even be more belligerent because there's not that personal touch there. So I'm glad that you guys do that, because I think it's phenomenal, because we'll talk about it later, but you guys don't need to be punching bags. You don't need to, like, stand any kind of ground, because really it's about your guys' own safety and the safety of your staff. So just remember that. Again, be professional. Don't be like, Jen told me, you know, I can be snarky to somebody. Like, no, I mean, I am the queen of snarkiness, but be professional. Be professional, but you can set boundaries for yourself. So we're not going to cover this a lot, but really is to have a plan. And this is really going to be the theme of today, is not only to be situationally aware, but to have a plan, because the studies and the data has shown these are just 2 types of plans. One's called the OODA loop. One's the denial, deliberation, decisive movement. Is essentially, it was developed so people have something. And what they're finding is if somebody's involved in whatever decision, there's all these phases that somebody goes through when they have to make a decision. So they're just saying, if you have a plan, you'll come to a conclusion faster, because your mind's already been there, your mind's already done that. So you have to do a couple of different things. You have to recognize there's an issue. You have to now decide what you're going to do, and then you're going to have to act. And if it doesn't work, you're going to have to do something, and you're going to have to do it over again until it works for you. So the biggest takeaway I would say on this slide is just have a plan. I'm going to talk a little bit about, like, when we do active shooter or active threat situations, and when I do this class, again, I really like it when everybody's engaged. And then again, I was telling you, couple months go by and it's kind of a little complacent, and people don't do that. What I would challenge you is, and it's very simple, it doesn't take a lot of resources, is if you go back into your own environment and you say, hey, we're going to do a table talk, or we're going to do a 5-minute discussion on what to do if X happens, and to give you and your group like little mini scenarios to stay engaged, because the studies have shown if you do that, then in terms of when it does happen, you're going to be faster. It's like law enforcement. We do a lot of training for defensive tactics. We do a lot of shooting. We do all that stuff. And it's not because we expect to be there, even though a lot of times we are in those situations, but because we've practiced this, we've visualized it, we mentally kind of have been there. When the real life situation happens, we'll revert back to our training. So I would challenge you guys to go back to your groups, and it could be something simple like this. Hey, everybody, let's identify where the panic buttons are. And then you go around and you do that's one exercise, okay? That took, 5 minutes, not even that. Or the next one is like, hey, you had a situation of this person, you handled it great. Can you do a debrief on that and tell us what worked? We can learn so much from each other. So I think that we could spend just a little bit more time of doing these little tiny tabletops or these little discussions, and it will help us to still stay engaged. Something so simple of like, where are our closest exits? Where are entrance points? If somebody was to come through that door, where do we have? Again, it's just to keep your mind engaged. So have a plan continued. This is the Supreme Court. This is the library. This is not your building. But this is when I was telling you about be knowledgeable of your security plans and protocols. It's a must. And then be familiar with your surroundings. So where your panic buttons, safety areas, exit points. You know that if you go down that hallway, that leads to a dead hallway. Don't go down that one. Here's a better route. So having these plans is going to help you in the long run in the event that something does happen. And then again, I hope it doesn't. But we live in a society where, unfortunately, I have to teach you guys these classes, and it's sad, but I think knowledge is power, and I think if you have something to take away, I think it will be not only beneficial for your work, but it could be stuff that you could take away when you go to the grocery store, you go home, you go to a play, you go to your daughter's school or your son's school. So these are all skills that can apply anywhere. So here's what not having a plan looks like. As you can see, poor planning leads to poor results. We do know that. This is a courthouse. It is not a courthouse in Oregon. It is a little grainy. It is a surveillance video. There is no audio. Nothing traumatic happens. So I'll give you the disclaimer there. And this setup is actually much more secure than a lot of the courthouse setups around Oregon. If I was to tell you guys that there's like 20 something counties that have no security, would you guys be shocked about that? Or is that something that you guys are aware of? Like zero security, no. Yeah, I don't know if you've ever been to any courthouse, and even as law enforcement, I went to a courthouse actually to do an assessment, and I'm like, do I sign in? Do I tell you that I'm an officer? Do I tell you that I have a gun? And they're like, no. And I'm like, where are people? Where? Nothing. They got nothing. No screening, no nothing. So it does exist. We're trying to change it because in terms of threats and stuff, obviously it's huge. You guys have all that. And even when I teach this class everywhere, I think Multnomah gets a bad rap for a number of reasons. But one of them, they're like, oh, they have like a state-of-the-art building. They have security, which yes, they have all these things. But I always tell them Multnomah has a fair share of problems themselves. Like they deal with things that you guys would never deal with in Harney County or Grant County and things like that. But they do have security. So obviously there are things that going with you. And even when we talk about, well, they have so many employees, and I'm like, I can tell you they're still short staffed. Like they have so many employees, but they also have so many cases. So take that with a grain of salt. So what I want you to see here, it's going to be a little hard to see. So this looks like most, or not even most of Oregon, but it looks like a small percent of the Oregon courthouses that at least have, like these are 2 police officers. They are armed, they have guns, and you have to go through some kind of screening. So it's not that they don't have anything in play. It's just in terms of, we'll talk about it here. I don't think they had a plan for what's going to happen. And again, it's nothing crazy. So here we go. It's a little hard to see. You'll see a person on a bench start to walk up. and just pay attention if you can to see what that person is doing or does. We have other officers arriving to assist. I like to call this the tactical pig pile, something that we learn in the academy. I'm just kidding. It just naturally happens. We'll do a little pig pile. And that's the end. Do you guys know what that person was trying to do? Yeah. So even in a secure environment, just like this, I would consider this pretty secure in terms of, better than some of the other courts have. This person is waiting and watching. And we'll talk about a little bit about hostile surveillance. But when did that person approach the officers? Did you guys notice when? Okay, excellent. When the backs were turned, and what were they doing?
Talking to each other.
Yeah, they were engaging. So this guy was waiting for that moment. This person knew that I cannot get into this courthouse with a weapon because they check, right? So he's doing his homework, if you want to call it that. So I'm gonna wait for an opportunity, and I am going to obtain a weapon. I know here in Multnomah, there was a situation where somebody took a hammer off a construction worker. You guys familiar with this at all? That happened? Like somebody came in and there was construction going on, and somebody grabbed the hammer and threatened people with the hammer. So I don't say that to scare you, but I'm saying that even though you have metal detectors, something like this could happen. This guy is clearly trying to get this officer's weapon. What I think that these officers didn't do, or at least this example, what had happened in this real life scenario is not proof of it, is they didn't train for what to do if somebody grabs your gun. Because I don't know if you saw it there, he like grabs it. No, there's a couple different things. Like people say, oh yeah, he turned his back. I turned my back on people. You have to, right? If not, I'd be like just right up against the wall, and I'd be like shuffling, making sure nobody's behind me. Nope, can't get behind me. Like there's people that walk up behind me. But I'm like, if you are my partner, can you tell me that somebody's walking up behind me? Same thing for you guys. If you're engaged with somebody and somebody's walking up behind you, I mean, you don't need to attack them, but be aware of what they're doing, because you're engaged with somebody, and you're only able to kind of pay attention to that person. And if you're engaged in conversation, you're not going to be looking behind you. So if you're my partner and somebody comes up to me, please let me know that somebody's coming up to me. Another thing is when that happens, they're kind of like doing like this weird like wrestling. I don't know, but I really firmly believe they didn't have a plan, because we train on this and we do it. And if somebody takes your gun, you do all these retention things. It is very violent if somebody does that. But what is this person's intention? Do you think this person's intention is to take my gun just because he wants a cop's gun? Like, what do you think his intentions are? His intentions are that he's going to use it on something, right? He's not taking it for a souvenir. So, these individuals, these officers, I say this, nothing bad happened in terms of nobody got hurt, nobody got injured, but I firmly believe they did not have a plan on what to do if somebody did whatever.
I thought it was odd that the officer started to like kneel down, almost allow, if he had a hold of the gun, allowing him to unholster it more easily.
Yeah, and then the other officer grabbed his gun out. It was kind of hard to see.
Yeah.
And they were doing almost this almost like this, like, hey, it was just a really weird thing. And I'm like, don't introduce another gun to a guy that wants to get a gun, because you're not even controlling a gun to begin with. There's so many things, but I say this because law enforcement makes mistakes. This is why I use it as an example, because I'm saying, hey, we're not perfect. We all let our guard down, but if we don't have a plan for these things, even being so trained, this could be the result. And actually, this honestly is the best result, because this could have gone very, very bad. And I'll tell you about a situation that happened in a courthouse that was similar to this in that it could have gone very bad, and it did not.
One thing though I want to point out is you notice everyone's still walking around totally oblivious to the actual potentially deadly situation that is unfolding in front of them, and they're just walking around like in the line of fire. Just they have no idea like what's going through their head. Like
yeah, and I'm not sure if they're even aware of what's going on because they're doing some weird dance, and again, we don't have.
They were like shouting.
Right, we don't have audio. We don't have the pleasure of audio, so I don't know. But in that situation, I'd be yelling, "Don't take my gun!" I'd be something to let people know, like avoid that area, don't go into it. I mean, obviously, when the other officers arrive and they start to take him down on the floor, that's probably a good indication to avoid that area. The next, we're gonna watch a video. It's gonna be a 3-part video. Hopefully, it will be beneficial for you guys. This is out of Lynn County. So Lynn County is a county in Oregon. It is south of Salem. And when we were talking about like security and, hey, I need to check in, it was Lynn County. I was like, hey, I'm here with my gun. They're like, yeah, we don't care. I was like, okay. Do you want to see my badge to make sure I'm a police officer? No, you're good. And I'm like, okay, we got a lot to learn here. But I do this. I don't make fun of them, but I think it's what we can learn from this. And this is a example, something that happened. I think there's a lot to kind of dissect, and we will. This happened on June 8th of this year. So it's very recent. To give you some contact or some contextual, it's a county. Lynn County is actually a fairly large county. Again, they don't have security. They don't have any magnetometers. There's no screening. Anybody can kind of come in and do as they please. They do have about 6 deputies that are stationed inside the court. So they do have that. They have cameras, obviously. And so like the higher risk trials and things like that, they will have a deputy inside. But if they don't have any indication that something's going to happen, then they don't. They just look at the cameras. So what I want you guys to do here is this whole, to give you some context, this whole event is 50 seconds long. Okay, it's very short in terms of what happens here. We're going to do it in pieces. We're going to break down. I want you to watch it, and I want you to watch it in the perspective of the judge is not there at the bench. Obviously, we don't have cameras over there for a variety of reasons, but the judge is not here. There is a court clerk. She is there. And I want you to kind of be in the shoes of the court clerk, and let's see what we can see, and then we'll talk about maybe some actions, what we'll do. Again, it is 50 seconds, but we're going to break it up into parts. There's no audio. Okay.
Body language.
Yeah. And when we talk about body language, we'll kind of discuss it. Obviously, the end here, his body language is very apparent what he wants you to do. When does this guy come in and that you guys, since I told you to pay attention and told you to watch, so hopefully you're watching what was going on, when does he display some signs for you guys that you like, this guy's going to be difficult? Yes.
You do like, when he was doing like that loose walk, we're kind of like letting his like arm go like this. Like that's when we like always know, like when they come into booking, it's like, oh, they're going to be difficult.
Okay, excellent. So, and you picked that up where, right when he was walking in? Excellent. What about anybody else? Yes.
He grabs one of the wooden chairs, and it looked like he was thinking, how easy will this be to throw?
Excellent. You are the first person to notice that, and you will figure out why that's going to be important later. Great observation skills.
Well, I was gonna say, I didn't even see that part, but the way he pulled the chair out before he sat in it.
Yes. When we watch this and we kind of dissect it, again, we have the ability to Monday morning quarterback it, or we have the advantage of speeding up, slowing down, pausing. which people obviously did not have in this situation, is people will say commonly when he comes up to the desk and puts his foot on the desk, that's when I would have a problem. And then obviously he gives us a little sign language there too. But I would argue that his body language right as he's walking in, and that's why we need to pick up on some of these things. And again, it doesn't mean like this happens, so we're going to have to do this. But based on this scenario, you're the person in the courtroom because there is a person there. What are you guys gonna do? And there's no right or wrong answer. I mean, there maybe could be a wrong one, but I haven't heard one yet. So if you're the person there, what are some things you're gonna do? There's a number of things you can do, guys. So if this was you, really, and this is all you saw, what are we gonna do here?
I would probably be sending a message to the judge or to staff in the back, letting them know that there's a person that may or may not be agitated.
Excellent. We need to tell the judges, we need to tell staff, like, you observe this behavior. I mean, obviously I'm showing it to you, so likely it's not going to get any better. But even if it does, like if you alert staff and say, this guy, this is not something that's common. He's already being very disrespectful. Potentially this could be a handful. Now, mind you, if you give that notification to your other coworkers and the judge, and it turns out fine, great, turns out fine. I don't think you're sharing anything like detrimental, especially if they kind of act, then go forward and start behaving, which this guy is not going to, spoiler alert. But great, I think you do need to notify somebody. Just remember that this event is 50 seconds long. So I know people can type fast, but just know, keep that in the back of your mind. It's not a wrong answer, but time is of the essence here. And what about anybody else? So some people, anybody else, would you guys do anything different? Yeah.
Maybe like be like, hello, sir, like what's going on? Just like let him know that like you're observing his behavior and that it's irregular.
Excellent. So maybe just saying, hey, what's going on? How, just do something like to say, hi, I see you, kind of a thing, without being confrontational. I also think, and I'll get to both of you, I also think that now, since you are focused, you do need to be focused on this person, right? Like maybe your attention's not like get a message. I'm not saying not to send a message, but you need to start watching this person because he's giving you some signs that, like I need to be on alert at the very least. Go ahead and then we'll get to you.
Yeah, I'd say first, excuse me, sir, please get your feet off the table. That's, not appropriate conduct for this setting.
Okay. I don't disagree with you. Some people won't do it because some people aren't confrontational. So they'll be like, I'm not going to do it. That's not my job. I don't disagree with you. Just know that some people are not going to take that option. But I like to set things in context like we had talked about before. Yes.
So you talked about they're not having security outside coming in. Do they have a panic button in the courtroom?
They sure do.
Oh, so I would push the button.
Excellent. So you push the panic button.
I don't know that I mean, from what I've seen up until this point,
Yep.
I don't know that I would have pushed the panic button right now.
Okay.
Because I don't know what this guy is about to do, and
Okay.
I don't want to have the security come running into the courtroom if it's not going to escalate, because that could escalate it unnecessarily.
Yes. Police presence can escalate a situation. They obviously can de-escalate a situation. So there is the ability to alert. So panic button is not a wrong answer. Maybe could be followed up with a phone call saying, hey, here's what I got this situation. So that you can let them know they don't need to send 20 officers there, maybe give them a little bit more information. Like I have this guy, I hit the panic button. Sometimes you only have time to hit the panic button. But I understand what you're saying. Right now you're not at that point, and that's great.
In the old building, we were always told don't push it unless you absolutely need it. And in this building, I've been told, and it could be wrong, that they have to take the stairs up. And so if we're on the 7th floor, or if other departments, on 16th floor, and they're running all the way up there.
I don't want to steal Sergeant Roldan's thunder, but because we're here and we're talking about it, his recommendation is this, and he also, we can confirm it with him, but his recommendation is if you really feel truly like there is an immediate safety to you or others, hit that panic button. If it's something that could be maybe you have time on your side, phone call. If it's something where you hit the panic button and you also want to do it in conjunction with a phone call, it will help their response in terms of what resources they need. So in this case, say you hit the panic button and then somebody calls or you call and you're like, hey, I mean, you also are going to have to make this call and this guy is standing right there. So that's what you have to work with. And you're like, hey, you might want to just come up here, check the cameras, whatever, get them. I don't disagree with what you're saying, and I think Sergeant Roldan is his theory is like, if you have to, hit it. If you have other options, give us a call. But you're not wrong on the panic button, and I'll tell you why.
One point to add, I'm not sure if everyone is aware of this, but all of our phones in the building are programmed to speed dial down to the front FSO desk. There's a speed dial in every single phone that we put out as part of the base programming of all of them. So you can always just speed dial and get to them right away.
So I love that you say that because this came up in our topic of conversation over the last few sessions, and I had heard a couple different things. I'm not saying that I don't believe you, but I don't believe no. Some people have said that no, that doesn't exist, and they were going to work on it, and Neil was going to follow up on it because I was like, if you do not have the deputy's number programmed in your phone, we need to do it right now because under an adrenaline or whatever situation, you're not going to remember that dang phone number.
No, it's part of the base programming of every phone of every template we put on every phone. It's there.
It has the speed dial on it, but those phones are so incomprehensible. I'd be trying to figure it out.
Yeah,
Do
you
you
have to hit
think-
the down arrow to get the speed dial, and then select it.
It has those little arrow, but the arrow. I mean, when I'm not stressed, I'm always poking things on that phone trying to
So
figure it out.
is there, I know we have new phone systems and I probably have the same one and I'm like,
Yeah.
It's the same
Um,
one. It's a different server. But it's the same.
say that because we're being recorded. Is there a way, riddle me this, is there a way to do like a hotkey or does that not exist with our phones?
That I'm not 100% sure on. I know the way that it's programmed is you hit the down arrow and then you can hit enter, and that is because it's the only speed dial program in every phone. You hit the down arrow to get the speed dials and then hit enter or the send.
I don't like it. I don't like it.
So maybe we just need some time training on it or practice.
Yeah, possibly.
In the old courthouse, they put an orange sticker on there
Yes.
with the
Oh,
extension, and that was actually the best because I could just dial it really fast. It's faster than figuring out speed dial.
So with that being said, Neil also gave me permission to get this out there. If you guys have safety recommendations, if there's something, again, I'm not saying that, oh, it's like a genie, you get 3 wishes and your wish is going to be granted. What I'm saying is, if there is something that is a safety concern, let Neil know. He gave me permission. And we talked about the phone stuff, and I'm like, you guys need to have a hot button. But even if it's got to work with your guys' environment. So if it's either a hotkey or something like that, and maybe if that's not possible, maybe it's a sticker with on every phone. Like this is why I have this class, because if sometimes these little things do happen, obviously a lot of things with dollar amounts usually get tanked. But these are fixable things, and these are training opportunities, and these are things that I think that we can fix and make happen. So I like it. Okay.
I don't mean to belabor this scenario, but I was a clerk in the courtroom for many years. And if I were in there alone, and I think he's flipping her off, right?
Yes.
It's directed her.
Yes.
And in all those years, I think I hit the panic button. I never hit a panic button. They went off sometimes all by themselves. But I would hit the panic button in this scenario because that's really brazen, and I've never seen anybody behave like that and be that. Unless mom from the back is going to stop him, that woman that's walking. I assume that's mom.
Use your experience because you've been through a lot. You have seen a lot. So if something's out of the ordinary and you're going to say, hey, I'm going to hit the panic button.
I would have.
Like, listen, I'm not saying that's a wrong thing. I know that Sergeant Roldan, he said, if it's an emergency and you feel threatened, hit it.
Part of the problem in this building is everybody
hit it.
way more isolated.
Yeah.
In our respective units.
Yeah.
One of the things I was going to suggest was, you had talked about the code word.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So with some of us, like in our office, our courtroom is so far away from where everybody else is, and they are isolated. So
They're completely
if you're in this situation where you don't feel comfortable picking up the phone to call security, but you also don't want to hit the panic button, maybe a code word to your office staff who's in another room who could call security and say, hey, there's a person in the courtroom that is threatening, but it's not an emergency. We're just trying to alert you. But like
Yeah.
any code words that they could send quickly, so not like the clerk having to type out this whole long
Correct.
situation.
Yes.
But
Just to get somebody's attention, like, this is not your everyday transaction. I need help. And it might just mean I need somebody else here, and maybe somebody else, that other person is going to be the one that notifies somebody in the case of something goes wrong. Okay, yes.
I think what may be a reasonable approach as well on top of it all is this guy's clearly acting like a toddler and wants attention. I would appeal to his lawyer directly and say something along the lines of, you may want to get your client to change his attitude before the judge comes out. And I also don't think at that time it would be a bad idea to get up and leave the courtroom.
Excellent.
Then he can sit and flip off an empty chair all he wants.
Excellent. Okay.
And now you're in a
Excellent.
position where you can inform other people directly without subjecting yourself to anything that's loose in that courtroom being thrown at you.
Right, because who cares about stuff?
It's
I
not
mean,
your job to
we
protect
do
the
care
property
about,
of the courtroom.
correct. Okay, I like it. I'm telling you right now, leaving in this case is not a bad option. And some people are like, listen, I'm Jen, I'm not leaving yet, but I'm going to think about it. And I've even heard some people, because there are chambers behind. So there's a door that only the employees could access. So I have heard even people that employees, like, if they were that employee, they would go behind the door and they would just kind of sit there and they would wait, because they're not ready to commit to leaving. But if they had to exit, they could do it very fast. But I'm telling you, leaving right now is not a wrong decision for the very reasons that you just said, because it's property, right? Like, if anything happens, they can monitor it. You can get help. You could tell the judge. You could tell their staff. You can get deputies coming in here, because this isn't normal, right? And we know, after we watch this, we know things can happen very, very fast. So with that being said, for my folks that are staying, we'll watch this one. For the ones that left, you guys already left, and then we'll see what you guys think now. And maybe you still stay, I don't know. Ready? Part 2. Okay, so that's really it for part 2. They have some kind of dialogue and it stops right now. Okay, what about now? My stayers, we're gonna message. What about now? What did we all just witness? An assault.
Yep.
So now this guy, he showed us that he has the ability this is his mother, by the way. He has the ability to just hit his mom in a courtroom. Like, how brazen is this guy? So he just hit his mom in the courtroom. What's going to stop him from hitting anybody else? So what are some suggestions? What are some thoughts? If we stayed, what are you guys going to do different? If you're going to do anything different at all right now?
This is where the panic button gets.
Yeah.
Panic? Okay, panic.
Tell
Yep.
my clerk to hit it if I'm not hitting.
Everybody says we could hit the panic button. This is acceptable. Excellent. Okay. What about leaving? Do I have anybody at this point that says, I'm going to leave? Okay, back there. Yes. What do you have left in the beginning? Or did you still want to see more? So, okay, excellent. Okay, excellent. So now you're leaving, and why are you leaving now?
For what you said.
Excellent.
If you have a problem smacking her, why would you not smack the rest of us?
So now you're thinking your own safety, right? And you need to get out of there, which is a great option. Again, we had talked about it, and I did this class, and Sergeant Roldan, when he pops in here, he'll probably mention it, but I was teaching this class, and this gal was like, hey, several years back, clearly she's been with the court for a while, she said, I kind of got a little chastised by a deputy And I'm like, for what? Tell me, if you don't mind. And she said, yeah. So we were in court, and a deputy was like, apparently a defendant came to talk to the judge and got really close to them and ended up like going hands on or something like that. And the deputy is like, you need to go in the middle and you need to go in between of them and the judge. And I'm like, no, they did not say that. And she's like, yeah, I kind of got in trouble for it from the deputy. I'm like, and then right when I said that, Sergeant Roldan walked in and I was like, oh, I mean, police officers, we make our fair share of mistakes, as you all know. And I certainly have made them. But I'm like, please tell me you don't tell people that they need to like be like the bodyguard for the judge. And, you know, like you're not the Kevin Costner, the Whitney Houston. Like, please tell me that you're not doing this. And they're like, he's like, absolutely not. And I'm like, okay, thank goodness. Yes, you do not have to intervene. Sorry, Judge, you do not have to go in front of them and protect them. It's everybody's safety. We'll talk about some moral issues when it comes down to like the run, hide, fight, what you should do for other people if you just try to help them. There's no right or wrong, and there's no great answer for that. But absolutely not. Like, you don't need to insert yourself. You guys are not punching bags. You don't need to be assaulted. Just like the judge said, it's property. Just let that person do whatever they want in that courtroom in terms of like property, whatever. We'll replace that property. Obviously, it's on camera, so we're going to charge them for a number of crimes, to include obviously the assault. Okay, great. Anybody else have any other options on what they would do? We heard panic button, get out.
So when I watched the first one, I said, if that's mom, if she's going to control him, which is exactly what happened, right? She
Yeah.
tried to control him. But if I saw him hit her, I would be like, okay, this is done. You know, you're going to get arrested. You're
Excellent.
panic button. Or some of it depends on how, like, the feel of the top of their voices was that we can't hear.
Yes.
That is a lot of your sense of what's going on.
Yes,
I've chastised people I've had, because it was always family law, and they would fight. And I'm like, if you guys can't act like adults, you're in a courtroom, I'm going to call the sheriff and they can come and babysit you.
Excellent.
So,
and there's no problem to say that. I'm not sure.
I probably would.
This one, yeah, especially here he assaulted his mom. I mean, what are you gonna say? Don't hit her again? Like, I don't know. Like, this poor mom has probably dealt with a lot of this behavior from her adult son. Okay, part 3.
She didn't look too worried about it.
I know.
That's what's bad. She's kind of like, oh, well.
I know.
He's also like not intimidated at all by his much larger attorney. Like, you know, like he doesn't care.
Yeah, and the attorney, I think he's trying his best. He's like, listen, calm down. Like, don't, I mean, you just witnessed a crime. But for me, if I was that attorney, I'd be like, I'm creating distance, barriers, you know, maybe coaching mom, like, this is going bad. Like, maybe use those chairs to create a natural barrier and start exiting out. The chair is going to come into play. I'm glad you said that, because that's exactly what he was doing. He was trying to determine what he wanted to do next. And this is what he wanted to do.
Oh, yeah.
She's yelling stop. You can see equipment. Obviously, there's some kind of scuffle ensues. That's the gal. She's like, he's back there. Obviously, the deputy comes. Again, fast response, because it's only 50 seconds long. So the gal did get hit with the chair. She's okay. And I say okay, like in terms of it was minor injury. You could see her right there. But just think of mentally, like, and those chairs are freaking heavy. Yeah. So I think I show this to you, one, because I want you to look at behavior. I want you guys to look at and observe all these things. Go with your gut, go with your intuition. But to let you know that these happen so fast. This gal, it happens so fast. So I don't think options in the beginning. Obviously, we know how it ends. So everybody's like, I'm out of there. You know, like, I understand. You know the ending.
So did she call the deputy? Because, like, he was coming in at the same time she was kind of getting hit.
So I believe that she hit the panic button, stayed, and then they have access to cameras, so they saw the panic button, they were able to look at it, and then they were watching the situation evolve. But it was so fast. The guy picked up the chair. I don't think the deputies ever saw him hitting the mom. I think they missed out on that part, but there were some notification. But she stuck around too long, I think is the point of this.
Was she sitting at that desk where the
Yes,
chair?
yeah.
It looked like he was talking to her over on the other side of the.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know if she moved or changed areas, but yes, I think that leaving is an option. Getting out of there, you know that these things happen really fast. I mean, what's the worst case scenario? You leave and nothing happens and you monitor it and you kind of wait and you can watch and you can call security and say, hey, this is what I just saw. Let's just say the beginning, the first one. He's got his feet up there and he's super disrespectful. I can hear him talking to his attorney and they're arguing. Can you just send somebody at least in the area? Like maybe police presence. I mean, I kind of think this guy obviously needs police presence, even if I didn't know the end of the story. I think they needed to be there in the beginning, and I think they were en route. They just couldn't get there fast enough. But hitting a panic button and leaving is always an option if you're getting all these indicators that say bad. This is bad, and I think you guys all agreed the second series everybody would at least hit the panic button, and I would hope so. So. You do not have to take a beating. Obviously, it does happen. We have talked to this gal, and we've talked about different safety things, maybe stuff she even knew. Again, it's not her fault, obviously, and it happened really fast. And I think her position was similar to like, I just didn't know what to do. Like, I didn't know what time was appropriate time to leave. Like, am I responsible for the court? She had very conflicting feelings, and I can guarantee you, if she has something maybe even different, but maybe coming down that same line, she's going to hit the panic button. She's going to leave because based on her experience, because she got assaulted with a chair. So, okay. So
And because we don't have bailiffs at all, and a lot of times the clerks now are completely alone in their courtroom. Before the chambers were mostly attached and you could hear. But this, I don't know, if I were a clerk, I'd be really, I mean, there's other people there, the lawyer, but
yeah,
as soon as that guy put his feet up, I don't know, that's so unusual.
And some people have changed their process. I don't think Lynn County was one of them. They're looking at a lot of things, and you'll hear another Lynn County story later. Again, I'm not picking on them. I think there's a good training opportunity to learn from, but some of them have changed their process where they'll have two people in the courtroom at all times, so it doesn't leave one person alone. Again, with short staffing and numbers, it's not always possible, but we can learn a lot from this, and even us can make it better, because even though you guys do have obviously deputies here, they're not always in every single courtroom, as we know. So
Never.
yeah. Okay.
If they're only there if they were requested to be there ahead of time.
I don't even know if they're doing standbys anymore. They say they're short-staffed.
It's true,
The
yeah.
FSOs.
Yeah, I've heard it's only like extreme circumstances that they'll have.
True, you guys at clerk,
I heard criminal, they're staffing, maybe not for criminal cases, they're staffing officers, deputies to go up there.
If they're doing transports.
Yeah, so if they're doing transports, if someone, yeah.
And an FSO and deputy are different.
Correct.
Right, but
Yes, they are different, and they're different on their training too. They have different tools, as we know, and they also have different training. Doesn't mean they're not a good resource, but yeah, you gotta need to make sure what the differences are.
radios.
Yes, they do have radios. Yes, excellent. Okay, let's take 10 minutes before we move on to the next general safety of our presentation. Break time. Stretch, wake up, grab some coffee, use the bathroom. Yes.
Are the other counties not crying out
So
and
2
saying
years.
we need security? Aren't all of them, even in the east of the Cascades?
Yeah, I'm telling you. So I teach the same class like all over the state, and I feel I'm like, I get ready for it. It's almost like I need to like battle up because I'm like, let me hear it, and very passionate
So
people.
they do want it.
Oh,
Well,
absolutely.
it's crazy to me.
And
I only knew because somebody took this class and came back up and told me.
yeah, so the thing is, it's like this unique, because OJD and the county, and obviously it's every individual county.
Yeah.
Some counties are more wealthier than others,
Yes.
obviously. So some of the smaller counties just do not have any of the funding.
Yeah.
And it gets constantly
Scary.
taken away.
Yeah.
But the OJD employees are like, what about our safety? And So there's kind of like this tug and pull when really there needs to be like almost hand in hand, because what we're seeing is the county owns the building,
Yes,
right?
yes,
And the OJD, they have that mutual agreement or that
Yes.
bargaining where they say, we understand you can't afford it, we'll pay for the court employees. So OJD stepped in, state funded, blah, blah, blah. But we're having a problem because they're like, the county's like, I provided this building, but we don't have the resources and we don't. And then it's this weird, like, I don't know how to fix it. I know that OJD went to the legislators, the last long session, which was the session this year, and had this really big package, like in terms of like what they wanted to see, and court security was in it for all counties. And it immediately got shut down because it was like so big. And anything that has a huge dollar, they'll usually tank it. So
Something bad has to happen.
unfortunately, you're 100% right. And that's why we're like, let's be proactive. Like, can we be proactive? And then maybe it's like, maybe if the counties can't pay, maybe legislators need to give more money to OJD to do nothing but that program
security, yeah.
and getting people trained. They've even talked about private security. So a lot of other people don't have FSOs. They're
Yeah.
kind of unique to here. And they were kind of a unique thing. I'm like, what?
It was just to get cheaper
Yes.
security is what it's for,
Yes.
right? So
So
that not deputy screening out the
if
door.
we could actually mimic what you guys do here in Portland, meaning like they're by the county, their security, they get paid, they do training, is we would do that all over, because what we're seeing is there's a lot of other security companies. Some of the famous or most common ones are like DPI, and they're okay. There's some kind of training, but they definitely let things like slide that
Right,
I'm like,
definitely.
oh, you don't want
Yeah.
somebody that does their job,
Yeah.
half.
Lots of turnover probably.
Yes, because they don't pay them enough, right?
They do.
So people are like, I'm not going to come here and do this job for this pay, which honestly, I don't blame them. But
FSOs actually are not paid very well.
oh, they're not.
No, it's pretty, especially compared to the deputies. I was shocked.
Surprisingly low turnover though. We've had a lot of.
Yeah,
people all
Lately,
along
there's
time.
been a lot of turnover, but it's,
Yeah.
there wasn't. By the way, I'm friends with one of the FSOs, and he heard through the grapevine that you guys have an opening. Is that true?
We do.
He couldn't
Yes.
find it. Where can he find it? I said I would ask.
You're so funny. So we do have an opening. It is, they're not going to open it, obviously, until after the holidays.
Okay,
So it sounds like they should expect an announcement maybe February.
and it's on OJD's page, right? 'Cause you
It'll
guys-
be on Workday, it will
You guys
be
are-
on, yep, it'll be on
well,
OJD.
They're county employees, but I'll tell them to look on there, so.
Yeah, so they are going to start heavily doing it. And
Tell
they're
him.
really trying to also get some more, because they're wanting to take more security and OJD to be responsible for it, because it's just not happening
Yeah,
for a number of
maybe other
reasons. So
So I've been around here forever, and this might be courthouse lore, I don't know. But when I started, it was like 26 years ago, we had security already, and I heard that the reason why we had security is because someone brought a gun in a family law case, of course, and shot, and there's a bullet hole in the ceiling. It was Judge Harold's courtroom. That's the courthouse lore anyway.
well, I'll tell you,
I think it was 508, that one on the, so.
yeah, I'll
That
tell
was
you,
doing
I'll tell you
great.
another story when we all get back together. And unfortunately, like the gentleman said over here, it's gonna take something unfortunate to happen in these courtrooms, because I'm telling you, people are watching. They know. They're like,
Of course.
they walk in and they're just as astonished as I am, because
Yeah.
as a society, I think we kind of expect it. Before it was a little hard, but I think as a
Yeah.
society, like the norm is, you go to the airport, you're gonna get searched.
Yes.
You go to the courthouse,
You're
you're
gonna
gonna
get
have to get searched.
I'm shocked.
And the people that know this, and if they have any ill intentions, they know all the ones that are secured and they know the ones that are not secured.
Of course.
So, because they are doing their homework and they're doing the research. So,
I gotta say on this one,
yes.
I don't like the idea of standing by a secured door waiting for something to happen. If
Okay.
you're gonna go through the secured door, go through it.
Oh, yes.
Don't wait for the
Yes.
guy to rush you, then
Yes.
go through the secured
Yes,
door
and
where
then
you don't
have
have
them
an
follow you.
opportunity to
Yes.
close the secured
Yes.
door.
And that is another thing. I'm glad you brought that up, because it's like, you need to again, this is fast. If you think you can get in and close the door before this person can come, that's when you need to take that opportunity. But you do not want unsecured people or this guy, this piece of work, to go into a secured area, right?
Our old courthouse, they weren't even secure doors.
No.
Did you think we'd just left
Yeah.
the chamber doors open?
Yeah.
Well, that's many courthouses around Oregon are
It
actually.
looks a lot.
I'm gonna say, that may not be
Yeah,
a secure
that's
door.
what I was
When again,
Actually, I
yeah,
do
yeah.
know that they do have they have an access reader. I do know that because they did, OJD did a security improvement. And they didn't have one and they're like, we need to have this badge access at minimum. So, yeah. Yeah, Portland County, they've been getting their fair share of issues, and hopefully that will institute some kind of change. I don't know. It comes with a high dollar amount, but we'll see. I think that I'm like, strike while the iron's hot. Like I told the TCA down there, I was like, this is your push. Go now when you have. There's another incident that I'll talk about, and do it now. And it's kind of fizzled out, so people are like, that was 2 months ago, kind of a thing. So
James is a nice guy, though. James Belshie.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, he is. He's a very nice guy. And unfortunately, we've had a lot of conversations. I'm like, I'm so sorry, Jim. I'm so sorry.
You get him talking about barbecue, he'll go forever.
Oh, interesting. So avoid barbecue. I'm just kidding.
Depends on if you want.
Depend on your time limit, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect timing, Sergeant. Just because we took a break, and we'll have you do your piece whenever everybody gets back to from break. That way you can get on to the all important things that you probably have to do.
Yes,
Happy birthday.
thank you.
Reached a quarter century yet?
Yes, and now I am, my brain is
The
fully
security
developed.
checkpoint.
Oh, yes, of course it is.
Brought that up, I was like, oh, it's more secure than
How's
Columbia.
it going on?
I know.
It's going pretty good.
I know. I'm telling you, some of the courses they have like an
We have, like, way
interesting
more
system
staff,
where
like, after
they
I
do
got
have like
hired,
the
Yes.
portable
like,
ones,
they,
like the metal detectors, so they're just set
there was
up.
four
They
of
have
them,
like
now
a
there's 9 of us.
what they deem as like a high
So
risk
you
trial,
day
but
shift then?
it's definitely
Yes,
not anything on a continuous basis.
Yeah.
So
Swing weekend or?
Well, they
Yeah,
only
I was
have it
like-
when you're going
I
into
was
the
down
one courtroom, in
switch
the old
to
building.
swing.
yep.
And it's like, and then to get through that courtroom, you have to go right by the judge's chambers.
Then they
Yep.
hide
Yeah.
the pretty sketch, like,
Yeah.
after 6 PM.
Although, at least at the time, the judge who was in that chamber was packing
When
at
does
all
swing start at
times.
3?
Three.
That's up
No, not the old PJ. I mean, Reed probably had guns, I'm pretty
So
sure.
it'd mostly be the
But,
shift
no, it
differential
was
though.
Judge,
Yeah.
Did you think you were gonna get a full whole shift?
Beard, got the beard.
Yeah, I would,
Yeah.
I didn't think so.
So, but I
He used to like fish off the
was out
balcony.
for 3 hours, I'm like, that's not.
Different, how much?
Yeah, because his,
Yeah.
and like his chambers
They
just
wanna
opened
kinda
up
do a
on this like
graveyard,
flat
because,
roof,
like, the sheriff's office
with
is,
no
right
like guardrail or anything,
Yeah.
just right over the river.
That is so awesome. I love to hear stories like that.
Yeah.
Like, 11:30 and like 7 AM.
Yeah.
And they don't like that, they don't really have the
Yeah,
staff for it.
it's
So it's like
shocking.
they're
You
gonna
walk in.
probably lose more staff.
I don't know if Camp County is the same, but it's kind of similar to where you can just walk in, like you're talking about, where it's like, you
Out of
may or
the
may not
sheriff
have a deputy at the
Yeah.
window there, but usually more
Because
often
they
than
would
not,
like
you're
to
there,
see
you've
how
got
much
the
they do
building
because
directory,
they'll,
and
like,
So much.
you've got like a T hallway there.
yeah,
and that's-
we'll do like 2
Yeah, they'll put in
security or
security.
12.
Yeah, they did.
Now.
Yeah.
Yeah, gosh.
They're gonna start a
For a long time,
graveyard
they didn't have
for
it.
you guys?
Yeah, no, you can just walk right in.
The sheriff's office.
Yeah, I'm trying to I'm trying to
There's, like,
just be like, we need to have a standard. Like, there has to be
you have to have like 4 more
a
people.
standard.
Yeah.
And this is what you have to do to meet a court
Probably be like,
for security
Yeah.
reasons. Yeah.
there's really a lot of people that come in
Yeah.
during that time, is there?
It's just,
It honestly is so
That's that weird funding.
Right,
The
yeah.
county's building and the county's job is to secure it.
And they're like,
but
no,
it's-
OJD, yes, it's like, because
But
at the
it's
end of
your
the day,
staff, and
nobody
like-
wants to pay the bill,
Yep.
you know, and you're like, and so stuff doesn't happen. It's like, can we split it? Can we split the bill? Like, anything? Yeah, and there's a lot of counties, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of counties that are very poor, you know, that have 5 deputies to the entire county.
Yeah.
So they can't afford to have 1 deputy be at the courthouse when they're covering a county that's very rural.
Well, you still, even with that though, you don't have 24/7 coverage. You OSP picking up the slack where you've got to go, you know,
Use
many
OSP
miles
as like
for
one
anything.
They don't-
patrol officer for
And-
multiple counties.
Yeah.
Usually you're a 1-person car, so it's like
We used to
Pretty
be
much
24,
on your own.
and now it's like, no, they
Yeah,
can't
that
even
changed
do
a
it
lot,
with their
yeah.
staff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, excellent. I think we're just waiting on a couple, but I think we'll get started in the sake of time because I really do want to get you guys out on time. I went a little bit over this morning, so because the good sergeant is here, I'll have him do kind of what he wants to talk about. And of course, if you guys have any questions at all, this is a great time to do it. Obviously, you can also contact him at a later date if you don't feel comfortable, but Sergeant.
Well, I hope you do feel comfortable to ask me questions at this point because I want to make this about you. And administration asked me to talk to you folks about how we do operations in here at the courthouse. This is the opportunity for you to see what my job is about. I manage 28 deputies, all the deputies in uniform that you see in the courthouse, they're under my supervision. So any questions that you have about what we do and what we do it, this might be a good time. I don't want to take so much from the presentation. But one of the most common questions is the panic alarms. It seems like we use a panic alarm whenever we have an issue. But I think the panic alarm, in my opinion, is when things have gone really bad and there's some gray area between things being normal to things being really bad between how to use the panic alarm. The reason from my perspective that I want to give a little more of a visual how that works is that once I press a panic alarm, that reflects on a panel, a radio calls, hey, we have a panic alarm in a certain room or area, we send every resource available to this room. What happens if it's something minor, instead of de-escalating things, seems like they're really bad and it escalates the person. Just basically the type of clientele that comes into this building, sometimes it's managing the resources is better. But if you feel like your life is in danger or something, your physical being is in danger, anybody around you, yes, please use that because that's what it's there for. We just want to know information. If you perceive something, oh, this can potentially go bad, don't let it go bad so far that you need to press panic alarm, give us a phone call. Hey, we have this person here, he's being agitated, we've been talking to him or her for like 10 minutes. It seems not going anywhere. Please have 2 deputies present. Then I'll send some resources there. That maybe brings a little bit of corroboration and it helps manage my resources in a better way. With that, I want to open, also you should be familiar with all the panic alarms are in your area. Some of them are right underneath the desk. Some of them are far behind that, but some of them are mounted in the wall. But you should familiarize yourself right there. Any questions for me? This is the smallest class that we have. Please don't feel afraid. Any questions? There's no bad questions. Anything that you see, what we do here, what we hear, doesn't have to be related in terms of the panic alarms or anything like that. This is your opportunity to ask any questions you want.
Not the courtrooms, the rest of the building, the operations. Where are there cameras just in the entryways or are there cameras actually on the department? Like, for example, I'm on the 4th floor, family lawn, parking.
So all the cameras are in view of the public areas.
Okay.
So not in the secure areas where staff work. That's where all the cameras are at. There's another question, thank you, because these prompts are questions that other classes ask questions. Another question that we're asking in relation to the cameras is why are we monitoring all the time? We are monitoring things that are happening. My main concern is folks are in custody. Those are the cameras that I primarily focus on that monitor. I have 1 deputy doing all this job, receiving phone calls, dispatching deputies to court matters, and monitoring the camera. If there's anything in your departments that you think it can go bad, but it doesn't need a deputy yet, you want to put that in our radar, let us know. We'll monitor the cameras too. But we are now monitoring every single camera all the time. Everything is recorded. for over 90 days, but I don't have a deputy watching every corner of the building.
Is the deputy that's monitoring the cameras, do they have access to Teams?
They do. That's the deputy, when I send the email in the morning that I said, this deputy is going to be assigned to this desk, that is the deputy that is monitoring the camera.
So
Absolutely.
if we had a situation where maybe we didn't think we needed to press the panic button yet, but wanted to maybe alert somebody that there may be a threat, could we Teams that person to say,
That is the exact person that needs to hear that message. Absolutely. And if you don't know, so that person changes every single day. That's why I try to put it in the emails every morning. But if you don't know, you can also send me a Teams message now. That has been a great tool for us. MCSO, we have relied for years, even from the old courthouses, in phone call. Sometimes I have a deputy station right in front of that phone, but the clerks are not, the J's are not, and for us returning their phone calls, sometimes it's just a lot of missed phone calls that happen. So the integration of Teams for MCSO has mitigated a lot of that miscommunication or lack of it. So it helps quite a bit. Yeah, thank you, Sherry. Yes.
So the rest of us don't get those emails that aren't involved in court. That, could
Here's
we
the
get,
phone number too.
Teams is actually such a
It is.
great idea. We should talk about getting like instead of specific person, like a group, we had set up group chats, something group with you where we could just send the message to it because a lot of us wouldn't get that, and the regular staff would not get that email anyway about who the deputy is.
That was a question that was asked prior. You know, to be honest, I don't want to be a filter of every communication of every person in the courthouse because I have a team to manage. I want to be the person that received the message. We need immediate attention here, a lot of these things. So, and also I don't want to overload that deputy. I think if something like that maybe can be filtered to the supervisor, and every supervisor, I think in this building should know at least how to get a contact with me. So if you're a supervising area supervisor, or you work, make sure you manage that to your supervisor first, and they can filter and bring it to me. Because I think perceptions, like interpretation of how a situation can be bad, can vary from situation to situation, and I feel I can be overwhelmed with like 20 or every minute Teams message. But yes, do you want to have this message? I think maybe we can work on IT or somebody in administration that you can get those emails too. Absolutely, so you know who the person is.
I don't actually really want the emails.
Yeah.
There's a reason that you don't want to.
But I mean, this is like, I understand it's for emergency only, but people are only going to use that for emergency, but they need to know about it. Like, I am a supervisor, and I don't know even, like, I'm not connected and tied into any of this because I'm not in the courtrooms, and we're not. But we have a public entrance up there on driving law, and so does criminal, actually. Ours is locked, but we let people in all the time, but it's very isolated, and if you're,
You're in the fourth floor at the end?
we're not the very end, that's criminal, family law's the one,
Okay.
yeah, and we also have restraining order people now that come up,
Absolutely.
and it's all kind of isolated, so if we were a little more connected in teams, just in case, instead of me fighting with my phone and trying to find my speed dial.
Yes.
Well, another benefit of Teams is it's silent.
Yeah, it's
It
silent.
is silent,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a great tool. And there's a little bit of a practice culture, like it works great for OJD, because I think most of the folks that work for the state have a computer available right now. We are mobile, we don't have a computer. I probably have it most of the time as deputy at the desk. I have Teams on my phone, so I'm always checking it. Yes, how do we get that information to you every single day? Because I don't have one deputy assigned for that for a year. I have 4 deputies or 5 deputies working there. But if it's a good tool to manage that information, you don't have a phone call, you want to have that discretion, instead of alerting the person you're talking to, you're becoming a problem, I know you're becoming a problem, you can send them a message. I think it's a great tool.
Yeah, because
Now we have to bridge that communication.
Yeah, because there's situations where we don't need 5 people blazing in. Maybe we need 1 or 2 strolling in.
Absolutely, yes.
But you're gonna get the panic button if we don't have other options,
No,
is what,
no,
you know what I mean?
And that is exactly, that's what
I
I'm
know.
hearing, because that's exactly what is happening.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just lack of tools, or well, this is the only tool that I have, and I'm pressing this, then we have deputies responding.
Or the panic button that fell on the floor, and I think it went off. It fell off the desk.
Yeah, if they get bumped, they go off.
They go off.
Work under a desk or something, or.
Yeah.
How about, like, if anybody, like you as a supervisor, if you need anything, because I'm assuming everything, you will filter everything before it comes to me, you can reach out directly to me.
I'm gone a lot, but yes, I mean.
Or an acting
yeah.
supervisor, or anybody covering for you. can reach directly to me.
No, it's totally fine. Yeah. I'll talk to our admin about a plan for that. That makes sense, that filters down, that works.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? I see I saw another hand around here. I might not have all the answers, but I have some.
Yeah, Teams is challenging only because you have to be actually, like the surgeon said, you have to actually be there and dealing with it. And then if it's an emergency, if he can't respond, and if he's not looking at it all the time, it's just not really the greatest way. We don't want to set people up for failure, right?
The question that was asked in the prior class was, an employee was coming in, and she was concerned that in the employee entrance, right there between the judges and Jefferson Station, she felt like somebody was following her, and that was concerning. She asked, well, what do I do now? I'm entrapped between this hallway and this door. What do I do? So for those that don't know that are using that entrance, at the end of that entrance, before you get to the sliding door where that key card is at, there's a panic button right below it.
I had no idea.
So
Last class did not know either. This is exactly why we do this class.
and it's just something for you to know. I don't know how many of you come here on the weekends, but if you encounter that situation that you come here on the weekends and somebody follows you, that might not be the best place to go because this building is empty, and even if you're present, nobody's going to be responding to you.
Exactly.
So it's good to avoid Monday to Friday up till 6. After that, it's not going to work so well. It's better maybe to stay in the public area and use your phone, but those are the things. If anybody comes in the Jefferson Station, which is the door on the side of the building, that door interlocks, what means that both doors cannot be open at the same time. So you come through one door, the front door has to close. So if somebody follows you, you are now trapped in a room and cannot go through the other door. Just a few things to think about. So you come in here, somebody's following you. Necessarily coming in the building, if the building is empty, in my opinion, might not be a lot of help. If the building is occupied with uniformed staff, we're there for you. But if the building is empty and think you're not going to come in the building and somebody traps you, you just can find that space for you to escape or run or call for help.
Somebody had asked, like, in terms of, like, if somebody comes in and they're following you, like tailgating, what do you do? Some options were like, do you confront them? That is an option. But just know that not everybody doing that is nefarious, right? Like, they might be just somebody that didn't have their badge, but it is very important, for security-wise, to get the right people into the building. But it also could be that somebody's trying to circumvent security. And if you don't feel comfortable saying, hey, you need a badge here. Do you have a badge? I didn't see one. And if you don't feel comfortable in confronting that person, then you can contact them.
Barb sent an email out asking us not to do that.
Yeah.
Just leave it to you guys.
Yeah, we were
Yes.
told a
Not
while
to
ago.
confront, so.
We were told a while ago to
Yeah.
confront, but recently we're told not
Not
to
to
confront.
confront
Okay.
ever.
Yes.
Yeah.
And,
I mean, on the weekend, it's different.
and sorry, I'm glad that you got direction on that.
Yeah, we did.
I'm glad that you got
It
direction on
went
that.
to everybody.
Here's,
Yeah.
I struggle with that word confrontation, but what I'm maybe suggesting is asking, not confronting,
She doesn't want us to even ask.
not even ask. So if
No.
somebody comes,
This is from Barb. She sent an email. I went to all users.
I'm curious to know the reasoning, and I'm not here to discuss,
Yeah.
maybe argue
Yeah.
that, but I'm curious to know what the reasoning is, because we have a lot of secure doors, like, for example, the first floor, between childcare, there's that door that separates the middle room, so there's a lot of public going
This
through
is
there.
only for coming in from the outside,
Yeah.
the garden entrance, Jefferson Station entrance.
Oh,
That's it.
so
That's it.
Yeah.
Doesn't apply to everywhere in the building?
No,
No,
just,
yeah,
just there.
Okay.
Because something happened where somebody did that and didn't end up well. I don't know.
I
what-
think I
yeah.
know, this is, I know what this
It
is
was
about.
just that door, not the rest of the building. For sure, the rest of the building, we want.
And it's fine, we are the second filter when it comes to that door.
Yeah.
As soon as once you go through that, we can filter that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, let the deputies know, like, hey, this person, if it's occupied and things like that, just let them know, like, hey, this person's, trying to, tailgate or whatever, let them know as an option.
A lot of the common questions that were asked from the private class is like, kind of personal security, what about outside the building? I noticed, like, I cannot avoid it. As soon as I walk in the building, people know where I work. But once you walk outside the building, like, if you continue displaying your badge and like that, then people now know where you work, the building you work, and they don't dislike public employees. Now you kind of become a target. So things to be aware of too. Going outside, listening to headphones and music, not keeping your head up and looking and making eye contact. And you might notice a person following you now when it's too late, you're inside the building. So those basic things that bring awareness to you. are good to use when you're walking out there, based on the prior class are asking those questions. Anything else?
There's undivided attention right now. If you have any,
Right now,
any burning
I really like
questions.
this because it gives me an opportunity to know what your needs are. I learned a lot coming through these classes for a few minutes. I know there is a gentleman there who works on the 7th floor, doesn't even have a phone. Now we're working on getting him a phone. And just a lot of things happening. So anything that happens in your area, concerns are happening that you think, well, nobody's hearing this, I want to hear about it. I might not have a solution today, but it's in my mind. I can find a solution if it comes to safety. Right, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I think this is going to be a great transition into this. It's personal, it's just general safety. So my caution on you is if you guys have a fear of clowns, look away, because there is going to be a creepy clown on my next slide. Sometimes I forget to say that, and people are like, oh, I hate clowns. So here's your warning. The old adage, police, they have a different adage, but if it feels creepy, you know, the hair, I already kind of mentioned that, it likely is creepy. You know, use your gut, use your intuition. But the sergeant said in terms of what we can do as our situational awareness has to be really paramount. And we'll kind of talk about that. Again, they're very general, but I would like to hear some stories. I'd like to hear some concerns, things like that if you guys really do have one or them. So we'll talk about parking lots. Parking lots for you guys is very different than talking to another county, because for the most part, when we start talking about parking, a lot of the other county buildings have like all employees park in this lot, or some of them are secured, some are non-secured. You guys have the most dynamic parking situation ever, and the most challenging because there's no one spot, and you guys are all coming and going from various modes of transportation, bike, walk, you know, TriMet, bus, rideshare, and then the different garages. Some people, and the lady, you know, on the last class, she's like, oh, I park down by the river, and I'm like, oh, you do? And she's like, yeah, people give me a lot of gripe about it, but there really is a parking structure down by the river. I'm like, girl, are you afraid? She's like, I mean, I have safety protocols. It's cheap. I'm like, okay. But she knows these things going into it. So in some way, she's very safe because she's aware of it. She's aware that it is dangerous. You know, I laughed and I was like, is it really down by the river underneath the bridge? She said, yeah, it is. And I was like, okay, all right, well, good luck to you. No, just kidding.
It's poorly lit too.
What's that?
It's poorly lit too.
I know, she said everything. It's like, it was, and then one person parks there and she described the story of a person, and literally I cannot make this stuff up, which you guys probably say to yourself every day. But she's like, yeah, I came here, you know, I parked down by, you know, underneath the bridge, and she said a van pulled up, and I'm like, what? Did the van have like free candy or puppies on the side? Like, what is going on? I mean, we use that as an example, like as a joke. She said, no, legitimately, these two guys came out of a van and confronted her, like, and was like, I'm like, holy smokes, like, what did you do? And she says, well, I'm not saying this, that this may be what you should do, but this was the approach she took. She was like, yep, Jen, I'm going to be assertive. So she says, this is what I told these people down by the river in a van, I told them, I'm like, I have already in my head thought of 18 ways to murder you. And the people in the van were like, come on, let's go. And they got in their van and they left. So I'm not saying necessarily use that tactic, but I'm saying it is something that somebody did, and maybe you guys know this person. So maybe I'm sharing all of our great stories.
That's awesome.
I also had heard, and it was first time today this morning, and I'm gonna butcher it's a social media gal, apparently from San Francisco. I never knew this existed. It's Kitty Villain something. Has anybody heard of it? I did not hear about it, and I was like, what are you talking about? What are you trying to say? So she says, yeah, I follow this, and it's like this gal in San Francisco, and she gives like tips and tools, and I don't think she's an expert, by the way. So maybe don't do it, but I'm gonna actually watch it just to see what she was talking about. And this gal, she decides to, like, how she does her own personal safety if she feels like she's under attack, is she tries to up their craziness. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And she said, no, she does some freaky things. Again, I'm not condoning or telling that's what you should do, but it's a very interesting concept. Again, I'm not sure that you have to, like, if their level crazy is this, and I use crazy very loosely, obviously, that you have to be like an extreme, because they were telling me stories about how she was crawling backwards, or I don't know, and then the people were so freaked out they didn't want to talk to her. Like, maybe you don't do that, but it's something that exists if you guys want to check it out. I know.
Options.
I know. There are options out there. That is an option. So when I talk about parking, and again, I teach this class all over, I say parking, safety, and numbers, and then I'm like, how am I going to say safety and numbers for y'all? The only thing that I can imagine is if you guys know that you're parking in the same spot, or the same parking structure, which at any given time I feel like is not maybe always applicable. Yes, no?
Same structure, not same spot.
Okay, so same structure, you coming in at the same time. So maybe you can move as groups or have safety in numbers, but you're coming from different levels. So I'm trying to figure this out on the fly, but we do say if you have the ability and you are parking in some general area, or maybe you're all taking the same bus or whatever, safety in numbers, kind of get your team together, but then you're gonna have to figure out who's on your team. So there's some things on here that we're really just like, hey, watch out for lighting, scan your areas, report the lighting to facilities. This is if you have control over it. Obviously, I'm sure there's, like you had said, there's down by the river on the bridge, there is no lighting. So
The parking area itself is pretty well lit, but
yeah.
it's the area of the bridge sort of past the parking area between the riverfront and then where the parking area is that's poorly lit. Really.
Okay. Okay, I think I understand. This was more like, hey, in facilities, if something's fixed, let OJD staff know. Obviously, that's really not something for you guys. But I think in these circumstances, the general principles and the general rules can apply to anything. Can apply to even your situation in Portland. Can apply to taking public transportation, which a gal had asked me from the class last week if I had some tips and stuff like that. And so I incorporated this in my slide. But really, it's the same things that I'm going to tell you. It didn't matter really. It's where you're located. The number one thing, like the sergeant said, is you need to be aware. You need to be aware of your surroundings. So especially when it's getting dark, it's getting dark obviously later in the morning. And then it's getting dark earlier as you go home. That doesn't mean that these stuff doesn't happen in daylight, because it absolutely does. But just be visual. Be scanning your areas. This really isn't a time when you're coming and going or taking public transportation to be on your phone. And I know it's so hard, and I get sucked into it because after a day of work and you're just like, okay, I need to catch up on, whatever. I understand it's mind numbing. I go down the social media rabbit hole as well, but really, I really would challenge you guys to not be consumed, not be involved in something that's going to distract your attention for a number of reasons. I think people that are looking out there to do harm to people, whether it's any kind of personal harm as for physical, or if they're doing like thefts, things like that, they're looking for people that are not paying attention. So don't be that person that's not paying attention. Really be aware of your surroundings. And a number of things can happen. So if you're aware of your surroundings, and I joke, and I was like, hey, just if you go on this block and then you're parked over there and you have to get there, you generally have a couple blocks give and take. You might add some more steps on your watch, but there are some ways you can go that are safer than others. Is that accurate? Or given the situation that you can come up with. So if you're scanning your areas and you're being really good about paying attention to your surroundings. Let me give you this example, and people laugh because apparently it occurs quite frequently, is you have somebody and you're walking down the street and somebody's screaming. That's not it. But there's somebody screaming and the person has a machete, which apparently is pretty frequent. Like there's a lot of people that have large knives in Portland, right? For probably their own protection and things like that. But if you're walking and you're like, or you have another pathway that maybe just has somebody screaming. I mean, just pick the path that's going to be the safest. And I joke and I tell people this, and they're like, Jen, if we did that, we would never be able to get home. Like there would be no paths. I mean, I think you could probably find something. So use your best judgment. If there is a better or alternate route, then take that. If you need to cross the street and it's safe to do so, cross the street. If you see something that's truly dangerous in front of you, or kind of makes that hair on the back of your neck stand up. So try to avoid those areas. Again, stay off your cell phone. Same thing with headphones. So when I talk about public transportation, I had a gal in the class last week, and she said, it's like the whole airplane trick that you guys all probably know. If you sit next to me and if I have my earphones in, it means like busy, don't talk to me. No, just kidding. But if you have your earphones on or your headphones on or something like that, people generally don't talk to you. And this gal told me she does that very thing. She puts her AirPods or whatever in, and she doesn't have the volume on, or she has it on very, very low. I would just say that's a great, and she does that so people don't try to engage her because they think she's listening to something. But just don't be so distracted with anything, whether it's something that you're listening to or your cell phone, especially when you're in transit or you're on these different modes of transportation, because that's really your turn or your it's in your best safety interest to try to pay attention to what's going on around you. Same thing about your routes and stops. If you are concerned and it's about your stop and you don't like it, maybe take the next stop, things like that. So you guys know your routes the best, and I'm sure you know a lot of alternatives to get there. So if you are taking public transportation, just kind of go where it's the most safest for you. If you do feel like you're threatened and you're on public transportation, alert the driver if you can, if there's a driver, also alert other passengers. And that's that whole kind of thing that I talked about, drawing that line in the sand. If you have to, be assertive. And again, just know that there's some limitations if you do confront people, because now you're in a confront situation. But sometimes you have to, right? Sometimes you have no other methods of than just trying to confront that person and saying, hey, stop doing this, don't do that. And again, that does a couple things. It lets everybody around you know, and then it lets that person know that you're not going to be an easy target or an easy victim. Keep personal items close to you, obviously, for a theft value and things like that. And if you truly feel like you're being followed, please, 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 if somebody's following you and you're kind of in a denial phase, like, and we've all done that, like, is this person following me? And maybe take like a right or take a left, or change up your route, and then to see if they're still following you. You truly feel like you're being followed, and people are being followed. It's not kind of an old thing. There's some new stories that I have heard that people are truly being followed. Go to an area where there's a lot of people, public building, obviously police, fire department, this building, and then call police. Obviously, if you're in the police department, you don't have to call police because you're there. But if you're truly being followed, do that. I had a gal that I was doing a presentation in Salem, and she worked at one of the state buildings, and she was being followed. What she did is she was alert, she's aware. First, you got to be aware that you're being followed. She went to not the nearest building, she went to a building that her friend worked, and I was like, you bypassed like 5 buildings that would have provided you that safety. So if you truly being followed, go to that populated building. The other thing is, if you don't have any other options, and I joke about this, but if you're being followed and you do have an option to confront somebody and say, hey, don't follow me, just know that they might be like parked right next to you and they're really not following you. They're just trying to get to their car. I mean, use your best judgment. But again, that is an option to confront people. Anything else that you guys have learned, since you guys are the experts in this, in terms of public transportation, navigating in downtown Portland, getting to your cars, anything that you've done that has worked? I had a gal in the class earlier who said when she leaves, because obviously you can't have weapons inside the courthouse, when she leaves, she always has her keys like in her knuckles. You know, like she's gonna be like, she kind of brass knuckled herself without having a brass knuckle. But she said she does it every day on her trip home. She's preparing. And again, I'm not saying that you guys have to go to maybe some of these levels, but she has a plan. I kind of joked and I said, yeah, I mean, my water bottle is pretty heavy. So maybe you fill up your water bottle before you go before you walk to work or you walk to your car or whatever, and you have that sucker filled and you're like, hey, if somebody comes after me, this is the weapon that I have, and I'm going to hit somebody to defend myself if I have to defend myself, if it reaches that point. And I think those are already great. Some gal says, yeah, I have an umbrella, have it in my hand. Not only is it handy because it rains in Oregon, but I have it and I can use it as a weapon. Does anybody have anything else like that where they kind of use these things to help them, to empower them to have like kind of a safety plan that they would like to share? Yes.
In a family law, we have this like name change imposter, and we would always joke is like this is like the heaviest thing behind the counter, like the only thing that has like oomph to it. You gotta kind of like press down to like crimp the OJD seal into it.
Excellent. We'll talk about when you can use that. Maybe not on your walk to any kind of
like someone jumped the counter.
Excellent. Okay, yeah, we'll talk about that. I like that. Anything else?
If I feel like somebody's following me, or even if they're not, if they're just too close behind me, especially if it's a dude, and dudes should know that it makes women really uncomfortable and you walk right behind them, I will just stop and I will turn around and just wait for them to pass.
Mhm.
And kind of, for me personally, I make eye contact, like, you know.
That is an
I'll
option.
get in front of you, and I do that with driving sometimes too. If I feel like someone's driving me in my car, following me in my car, I'll just kind of
Pull over.
loop around or something and then pull up. Yeah.
Yeah, just make sure. I think that's good. I mean, I think that's good if they're truly intentions on following you. Just be aware that if that's the case, and say for walking, and you're walking and you pull along the side, and you're like, go for it, buddy. Just know that you guys are going to be in some kind of close proximation, so proximity. So you're going to have to do something if they wanted to try to attack you. So I'm not saying that's a bad option, because it's almost like, I see you, go ahead and go in front of me. After you, sir. I'll start following you now. No, I'm just
Most
kidding.
of the time they're not following you and not going to attack you, but if you're going to get attacked anyway, it's better to be facing them.
It's true,
my back, so.
and prepared for it, right?
Yes. So.
Okay. Excellent. Yes.
So one of the things I do is I won't walk with my hands in my pocket.
Excellent. Excellent. I like that. Why? Because you can't defend yourself if you need to?
I'm not going to be able to get them, like you already talked, reaction's already slower. So the only way you can try to catch up is to make shorter movements than the movement that's coming at you.
Absolutely.
I want to be able to get my hands up to here.
Yeah.
First thing, if I need to, and then figure out how to deal with it. I have to get them out of the pocket. My cell phone's in there, my keys are in there, they're in the way. And the keys I training between the knuckles is all right, but as a rake,
Yeah.
As a rake, you can hurt yourself when you actually put it.
Well, and
but the self-empowering part
yes,
is a powerful kind of,
because you're being aware, right? You have something in your hands, and you're like, listen, I have a plan. It might not be the best plan, but it's better than no plan at all. And the other thing I kind of thought with the keys is some vehicles don't have hard keys. It's just like a fob. So
right.
that also would be very interesting. You're just like nubbing them. I don't know. I don't know.
I have my phone and I have a fob, and that's how I get in anywhere.
Yes. Yeah.
But water bottle's another one, and
yeah.
It has a swinging element
yes.
to it, not intentionally, but
yes.
I'm always like, again, you get that real good centripetal force. Yes, that thing, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been seriously injured by those.
That is true.
I talk to victims sometimes. It's like water bottle is a frequent weapon.
And it's something, and And it has another benefit. You can stay hydrated, right?
Right.
Dual benefits
I
here.
park in that parking garage across the street.
Yes.
And
I did park
noticed-
there today too.
I noticed that I do it every day, right? And it's close, and there's usually nobody really around that much. And I noticed myself having a sense of safety in there. Like, I'm fine, nothing's gonna happen in here. But you have to like remind yourself that you are in a public, I don't know, does that happen to you guys?
Like a false sense of security
Yes, it
once
is
you
a
go
very
inside.
false
Yeah.
sense because,
In the
and
smart
I'm
park?
always aware in the smart park, even though I'm stepping in food.
I was like, that one is not, you lend me a sense of.
Shockingly, because the cops park stuff there too, and it's like,
Yeah.
they don't.
Yeah, so for me,
the
I'm
rest of the
like, I'm going up the stairs and I'm like looking behind, like what's lurking at me. And, I'm like, oh, this is
So many blind corners, and then there's those
dangerous.
walls that
Yeah.
somebody could just easily
I
Yes.
know,
shoulder you off.
Those walls I can't deal with, they're so low.
The stairs are really creepy.
Yes.
A few weeks ago, I was walking up, and it was daylight. I want to say it was probably 3 in the afternoon. I was walking up the stairs, and I came up behind a guy who was peeing on the stairs.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, the
There's
walls
lots
are
of
really
that.
low on the parking levels, but in the stairs, they're really high, so you get
Yeah.
all that privacy.
They're always.
Yeah, when I was leaving last on 5 p.m. Last week, and I'm like, I'm clearly not familiar with. I mean, I'm familiar with Portland, but I'm like 5 p.m. This is like a Thunderdome in here. Like I'm just sitting there, just waiting to get out, and I'm like, is this not a Blazer game, but is this like a Winterhawks game? Like, oh my goodness, like man, I need to end my class a little bit earlier. Just kidding. Yeah. Because you're getting stuck in the roundabout area, which I will again tonight. But anyways, great. Those are great suggestions. Again, it's all about empowerment, learning options. And if you have a water bottle, maybe fill it up. And if that's what you have in your hand, that's what you can use as the most quickest, efficient weapon if need be. But don't be distracted and just really be aware of your surroundings for a number of things like hazards, tripping, cars, people aren't paying attention. So just for your own, just physical safety. Okay, we'll talk about some mail theft, depending on how many questions people really have about this. Not mail theft, I'm sorry. Because really, I don't, mail threats is what I meant to say. Even though mail theft and identity theft is also concerning, but not for this this course. So it's probably not a surprise. The most common targets of mail attacks are government buildings, right? Back when I worked at that lovely building on the bottom there, the Capitol, the big scare was anthrax. I don't know if you guys remember that, and it probably surfaced here, but we had a couple incidences where it was usually the governor's office, and the port intern opened something, and it went poof. So it was a hoax, luckily, every single time. But we do have to treat it as the real thing. We had to shut things down, turn off the HVAC. It was always usually really hot or really cold. And then you have to have the hazmat team, which are generally people from fire department, come out and do testing. And it ended up turning out to be protein powder, crushed aspirin, you name it. We kind of got all of it, unfortunately. But you guys, it's probably not super shocking, but the new threat for mail stuff is what? Fentanyl. Yeah. Yeah, we're going to talk about fentanyl, and obviously we all know it's dangerous. The most scariest thing about fentanyl is for a fatal dose, it's a very, very minuscule amount that it takes to be fatal. So that's the new threat. I did talk to my counterparts at FBI, and even though, I think it's not zero, right, because I have to talk about it, but they are seeing some threats with fentanyl in the mail. Washington received one of them. So it is not zero. So obviously these other groups are ones that get targeted with mail threats as well. Most common, explosives, anthrax. We already talked about fentanyl. We already talked about how sometimes they could be hoax, but we do have to take it in terms of the real thing, because we live in that kind of day in society where we can't say, oh, this is not going to be it, and it turns out to be it. As you know, there's a very variety of ways the mail comes in, and each mail has its own kind of protocols and its own screening. So just be aware of that as well. And when I had taught this class, people were like, "Yeah, we don't open the mail. We have like a mail room."
Can we help you? Oh, shoot.
This is
What the heck? That's a frequent flyer. That's one of our frequent flyers. Scared. That's one of our frequent flyers.
doors up.
Yeah, we can close it. And everybody else that's coming in here should have badge access.
Came behind you.
Yeah, yeah. Which I saw your face and I was like, girl, okay, me and you.
Or what, like, you bust it. Oh, it's open.
Yeah, the clearance is fine.
I know, like,
Good old Clarence.
Man, that was very timely.
That was very timely.
When I walked in this morning, I saw the door prop. Every time I see that door prop, I'm like, why is a secure door prop?
Yeah, I think, well, in terms of like,
And then it was for security training, and I was like, is this a test?
You're like,
What not to
it
do?
was a test, and you guys all failed miserably. No,
I didn't come in that way, so I didn't fail.
yeah, no, it was a good call. It really should be closed, especially when we're all in here. You guys all have badge. The only one that doesn't have access to the room is me, and hopefully somebody will let me in. If not, I'm going home. So there you go. Thanks for that heads up. So yeah, it comes in a variety of forms in terms of, and each has its screening process. And what I was saying is, I kind of had thought in one class that all the mail gets open in one area, and I have been told that it's like not the case. Like each department, each area has to open up their mail. Is that correct? Okay. I'm glad, though I would probably change some of the processes because I know that Neil is going to get Narcan. Narcan is for fentanyl overdose. It's the nasal spray for the mail, like most where the mail is being processed and open. That's obviously the biggest threat. But I've been hearing from other people that they are opening up their mail in their areas, in their work areas as well. So I guess my recommendation for him is to have some of these things in terms of Narcan available nearby. I'm not saying that everybody needs to have it in their pocket. All the deputies have it, but we'll talk about a little bit about fentanyl in a minute. But so these are just general mail recommendations. You're not supposed to open it in a work area. Again, I understand people do that, but just know that they recommend having a designated room to open up all the mail. Know your protocols in terms of mail handling procedures. Please wear gloves. I think I scared a Washington County mail opener because I'm like, do you wear gloves? You open the mail? And he's like, no. I'm like, oh my gosh, like seriously, I'm not talking about just threats, but I'm like, people send the nastiest stuff in. Like people send feces, they send urine, they send blood, like our sovereign citizens. I'm just like, please, if you're going to open it, just please wear gloves for a number of reasons. But I guess I'm the only germaphobe here. But yeah, and then same thing if you're opening up the mail, we want you to have like some of those emergency contacts nearby. Narcan is a recommendation if you're going to be opening up mail in an area. If you really truly believe something's suspicious and you're just like, this doesn't look right, it's questionable, don't open it, don't move it, don't touch it. Contact law enforcement, contact a supervisor, contact your TCA. Just contact somebody, especially if something's really weird, and just let somebody know about it. Maybe you don't hit the panic button like we had talked with Sergeant Rolldown, unless it's panic button worthy. I don't want people to not hit the panic button when they should. By the way, that's just my adage. But let somebody else do it. And it says, if you're exposed to anything, we don't want you to leave the immediate area because we don't want you to get other people exposed. But the question has been brought up with fentanyl. And if you're the only person in there, and we're going to talk about, the next slide's going to talk about like what you feel and how fast this moves. So if you're the only person, you open up something, powder, and then you start to have symptoms, like what do you do as an individual, just to kind of, especially if you're by yourself, to try to alert somebody that maybe you need some medical attention, and we'll talk about that. But so fentanyl, it was first developed in 1959, is obviously for a medical use, for anesthetic. And up here is just its fatal dose of fentanyl. So that is a penny. It's very small, a penny, in terms of what that fatal dose is. And then it's even more magnified by the pencil lead. So a very, very small amount can be deadly. Somebody asked, like, what forms can you be affected by? Meaning, like, touch. Obviously, people that use fentanyl for drug use inject it. You can smoke it. You can snort it. But what's happening, and it's affecting people, is breathing. So when people are opening it in, law enforcement, especially if they're like searching bags or searching something on the side of the road, when gust comes and blows like some in their face, we've had people exposed to that. With that being said, I did not include a video of people in terms of being affected by fentanyl and overdosing. But on your own time, there is a really great video. You can just YouTube it, again, on your own time, of I believe it's Southern California, so like San Diego, of an officer that does happen. It's captured all on body camera. If you really want to see what somebody is like if they're affected by a fentanyl overdose, I would recommend you go there. So what should you do in a fentanyl overdose, or what kind of signs will you see in somebody? Severe sleepiness or loss of conscious. So what we're seeing is that somebody is like, and it happens really fast, guys. It's like, I don't feel really well. And then the I don't feel really well is like they pass out. It's very, very fast. It comes on them very quickly. So the person is unresponsive. They're still breathing at that point, but it is slow and shallow. Person can vomit, choke, gurgle. Their pupil size are going to be very small, very constricted, just as a heads up. I'm not saying that that's what you need to focus on. Their skin is going to be cold, clammy, and there's a discoloration of their lips and of their nails. So they turn blue when they're involved in some kind of overdose of fentanyl. So it says up here, what should you do if you think somebody is overdosing? So you should call 911, and the caveat here is if it's in the courthouse, call the court deputies, just because, again, if you can call 911, I'm not saying that that's not appropriate. Everybody knows the number, 911. But if they get a call here, then they have to route it to them, and then it's just a lag in time. So if you're here in the courthouse and say you get exposed, or a friend or coworker gets exposed, try to call the deputies immediately, and then let them know what you have, because they're gonna have to call an ambulance also immediately. So 911 does, like, 911 benefit, I would say, if there was a good benefit of it, is that they would dispatch an ambulance right away. Whereas you call them downstairs, they'll also call an ambulance too, but that's kind of an extra step that they have to do. But when in doubt, call 911, call the deputies here. It says administer naloxone. It's also called Narcan. Narcan is a brand, if available. You guys are not going to be outfitted with Narcan, so obviously you're not going to be administering it. Just know that, or at least not everyone will be, know that the deputies all carry it on their persons. Again, they're going to put it downstairs in some of the mill area rooms, and hopefully maybe we can get it to, like, if there's somebody from each division that opens the mill, maybe we can get them some Narcan as well. The thing about Narcan is if it's not a fentanyl overdose and you give somebody Narcan, nothing will happen. That means that's both good and bad, because it's something else, right? But good is it won't affect them at all. So it's not gonna, if you were to give me Narcan right now, it would be no effect for me. for just for, I guess, your own edification, is if somebody that is using fentanyl as a drug and they are overdosing, and we see this all the time in terms of police on the streets, they'll give that person Narcan and they'll come out fighting because you just wrecked their high. So they're ready to fight you. So again, the citizen that accidentally has it, they're not going to be fighting. I mean, they might be fighting for other reasons because of obviously the situation that they were exposed to, but that won't happen. So it does say to keep the person awake. So if you're with that person, keep them awake, try to keep them awake, try to lay themselves on their side. That's what we call a recovery position. And again, it's for that vomiting, that regurgitation, so that they don't choke on their own vomit. And try to stay with them until emergency workers arrive. Again, this is what you can do. Bless you. This is what you can do. But I want to just give you a little bit of caution. If you see somebody and they do that, I'm not saying if somebody collapses and you're like, you're on your own, buddy. Good luck. I'm out of here. I don't want to be exposed, right? I'm not saying that. I'm also not saying get in there, start doing all these things, put them on their side. Every situation is going to be different. If it's me, do that, please. But just be aware that they went down for a reason and you could be contaminated. You could be affected as well. I'm not saying don't help them. I'm not saying not help them. But you can help them by at least calling somebody. So just be very cautious with that. Does anybody have any questions on fentanyl? What to look for? Really, call 911 is really the best practice that you can. And of course, if you open something and you see powder, you need to distance yourself. This is where it kind of gets a little like, what do you do kind of a thing? Because the anthrax thing was to stay in the room. Fentanyl kind of has changed the game. Like, do you leave? Where do you go? Use your best judgment. If you open it up an open area, you're in an open area anyways. Questions at all?
Apartment mail then, like the judges, it comes straight there, sealed still?
Yeah.
They don't know who it's directed to.
And they open up to see who they need to route it to. Just more on this, the the United Postal Service kind of gave a recommendation up here. Again, it's not an isolated one thing alone doesn't make something suspicious, but when in doubt, again, we talked about this. If it's something that you're not familiar with, please just don't open it, don't move it. Contact somebody. I had a person, one of the clerks in Washington County. She called me and says, hey, I got a package. It's for the judge. The judge doesn't know this person at all. It's misspelled. It's very odd. And this person also gave this judge like a unique title. I don't know what it was, but it was like, you're master of the universe, judge, whatever. I don't know. And they're like, should we open it? I'm like, no, don't open it. Contact law enforcement, contact your deputies right there. And let them deal with it. If that means they bring the explosive guys and gals in, then that's what they do. So when in doubt, call somebody. Don't move it.
All of the mail gets x-rayed, so if it's a bomb or something, that should get caught. But the powder might not.
Yeah. And it's not, that should,
Yeah.
but there are stuff that comes through the mail. There's a human factor in there. So
Earlier when you were talking about the sovereign citizens, I was going to say it totally grosses me out because there's the fingerprint, but I thought it was ink. Is it blood?
Some will legitimately use red ink, but some of it is actually blood.
I've been so grossed out by that, and
Yeah.
I'm like, it's got to be red ink. But
yeah, it's some of them do. I've seen it with red ink, but I've also seen it with blood. They do it with blood. Yeah.
I mean,
like I said, wear gloves. Okay.
But we're talking about filing. We have to do data entry on these documents and stick them in a case. So will it be obvious if it's blood versus ink? I don't.
Not always, no.
It really grosses me out anyway. But and then a lot of times we get like coffee stained, smelly.
Yeah. Some gal said they got a smashed cockroach or something like that.
Oh,
Yeah, like inside the letter, like, listen, I'd rather handle a cockroach any day than poop, oh, yeah. Okay, question number 2. Okay. What do you guys think is the most safety concern that you guys have in working in your environment? This could be inside the courtroom, this could be, or the courthouse in general, it could be outside. Just somebody say something that they're most concerned about. Yes.
I work in the jail. Before we did like stalking orders and active people, and like Michael, like is this like maybe like someone just got a stalking order granted against them, or maybe like they just got a restraining order granted against them, or maybe you just saw them in jail. And so far, it's been kind of positive. Like they walk, like they're like, oh hi, like, and it's like I don't like that, but you know, like something like they just maybe like lost custody of their kids, they're not going to see them for a year, or they're now restricted and they're now not allowed to contact like their ex-girlfriend for like forever now because it's a stalking order, or they just got like arrested and they're like bumped, and then you know they get released from jail right there, like at the Justice Center, so then they're coming out like right where the main lobby is too. So just kind of like running into people that you just kind of like had this like more formal interaction with, and now you're like outside on the street or you're at Starbucks.
Excellent, because yeah, I think, and this this scenario obviously applies to you guys. What I tell people that work in small courts is like, you know everybody in the town, because they know everybody in the town. They're like, yep, you know that I went to high school with them. That's my cousin. I'm like I'm not even elaborating here. And they know everybody. I'm like, it's great that you know everybody. You have like some context, you have some background. Number 2, it's bad you know everybody, because we tend to make excuses about people like, oh no, that's just Jim, you know, he acts like that. But you bring up a good point, is you guys too have people that you encounter and that you are doing something here, just much like a police officer, right? You do something official and then you're at Safeway and you're like, oh, hi, I'm with all my family and I just arrested you last week. And, you know, like obviously people kind of recognize you. I think there are some things that you can do, like with your lanyard, like I'm not a big fan of wearing the outside the area, just because what it signifies or what they perceive it is. A lot of times people think, and I don't know if they do the same thing with you, they think they work for DOJ. Also don't want to be recognized as DOJ, so because of maybe some negative connotation that they have. So that is a really good safety concern, that you're dealing with somebody in a formal setting, and then you take a break or you do something and you see them outside in, you know, obviously a personal setting, and that's where it could be very vulnerable, where you have some safety measures in place here.
For the judges.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have you seen the cattle chute going into the Justice Center that judges have to use if they're the warrant duty?
No, I mean, we went and we did like I did like a kind of a walkthrough of it, but maybe I'm not. Oh,
the
it's
Third Avenue
yes,
side, that
yeah,
wood barrier.
yeah.
And the warrant duty judge has to go in there.
It's just like you have to just bypass all the.
There are people sleeping and
Yeah.
doing all sorts of things, and there's no security at the
Yeah,
door.
they keep it warm in there for whatever reason, so it's like really inviting. You know?
Oh, yes.
It used to be wide open, and all of us are wondering why they still have
Oh, interesting.
that cattle chute set up that way.
It's like, yes, let's make it more comfortable for people. In fact, here we have outlets. Would you like to also use our outlets? And
people, like right at that exit, like they get out of jail, they have all their stuff, they're spread it out everywhere, they're getting dressed, they're changing their clothes, they're, you know, charging their phone, yeah.
Like, let's make it more inviting and more welcoming for them to hang out and stay. Yeah.
And then even at best, when there is security there, there's oftentimes only one FSO there. So,
In terms of staff,
as far as
yeah.
who could, I mean, great, they can call someone, but as far as stopping an immediate thing that might be going down.
It is getting a security makeover soon as far as internal, but
yes.
I don't know about external.
Because you have nowhere to go once you're in this 20-foot
Yeah.
very confined area.
I know they're making improvements. I'm not sure if they're making improvements on that. If so, maybe it's like start having some conversations. I assume that people are aware of this. Like I assume that.
Yeah,
okay.
Yes,
like it's a common. Okay.
But they just still.
Okay.
There's
not made a move.
It feels like it's like the last holdout after the protests and everything. That it's like this is going to stay. You know?
Well, the new one is to give the duty judge the fob from Portland Police so they can come in from the Second Avenue entrance.
Okay,
Fobs are going away.
Well, the
Yeah.
fobs until they get to the key card.
Yeah.
right, because they are looking at like revamping that whole area. Yeah.
Those
Yeah.
fobs can be scanned by a flipper.
Oh, yeah, no.
$20 device that can break all
We're,
those
we're
securities.
talking about that this
Yeah.
morning, and I wasn't aware. I'm obviously know that there's a lot of technology out there, but they're like, yeah, you can just use a flipper. I'm like, what words are you using, IT person?
It's a little box for, it's for like troubleshooting, you know, like radio and infrared transmissions and stuff. And they're cheap, and like Amazon stopped selling them, but you can still get them pretty easily, about 20 to 50 bucks depending. But yeah, you can pop open any sort of like people love to use them to pop open like the Tesla fuel covers or the charging covers. But you can, any of those discs, those iDiscs, if they can get anywhere near one, you can scan the radio frequency off it and then duplicate it.
Crashing people's iPhones with it too.
Changing the channel at the bar, on the TV, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, leave it to people to be creative with technology and take something that was supposed to be like for good intentions and make it negative, like kind of like the AirTags, right? Now people are like getting, like the dangers with that and things like that. But yeah, I hadn't heard about the flippers. That was a first for me, which is very scary because then they could get access to things, obviously, that they're not supposed to have access to.
Yeah.
Have you guys?
Center back office area.
Yeah.
Have you guys?
That goes right.
Are you aware of anybody using them for malicious use? I mean, obviously, I don't know what use you would use them for positive use right now, but are you guys aware of any place right now that has saw them, been utilized?
No, not that I've not seen them in use.
Not at the county level, but they can be used to open garage doors.
Yeah.
If you have
Oh yeah.
garage door opener.
Gotcha.
Does it work on the car
On a what?
remotes too?
No, well, it depends on the technology of the car.
They're a little lower.
They can get your car through
Those
the headlight wiring now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why all those Hyundais that are getting stolen, yeah, that was one of their
They
big
can do
problems.
what?
After into the headlight wiring.
Yeah.
Vehicle, they have to
I
have
know.
some specialized equipment, but
And then
still.
what, turn my lights off or?
No, that was
Access
take
to
over your
drive
car.
away.
I give up.
You're like, just take
Take
it.
me.
Take it. Yeah. Okay. We will take a break, but I do want to cover some of these things because I don't want to run out of time and I don't want to extend you guys. So we're going to talk about threat assessment. Here's what the Secret Service has defined it. Essentially, it's just an analysis of facts and evidence of any behavior in a given situation. A lot of times it's communicated in various forms of communication, social media, talking, things like that, overhearing. So that's what they describe a threat assessment. So we're going to talk about aggression versus violence. So when we talk about this, there is going to be a method for my madness, but there are generally two types, and we categorize them in reactive and targeted. So reactive is impulsive. It's usually associated with an emotional state, whereas target is more pre-planned, premeditated. So if you think of your mass shootings, your mass killings and stuff like that, this is what falls in the targeted. It's more premeditated, more pre-planned. And then some of this reactive, effective, impulsive is generally just people reacting, like fights, assaults, things like that. That guy that we had saw in Lane County is his aggression was reactive. So it's a little bit hard to see here, but they've put it into two different categories in terms of what behavior is associated with this type of violence. So on the bottom, we have a yellow oranges mix, and this is what our aggression is, our reactive. And then the top is going to be more of our violent aggression. So when we talk about some of these things, and when there's a certain demographic or certain type of people that do this as well. So if I say pushing, slapping, biting, scratching, kicking, throwing objects, what did I just describe? They're usually, some of you have these at home. Yeah, they're children, right? Yeah, do they mean that they're like gonna be like antisocial personality people? Probably not, but they just don't, their brains haven't developed yet. So it's a very emotional state, and this is how they react, because they don't know how to react any other way. So yes, so when we're talking about these things, these are very reactive type behavior. If it was in an argument with my husband, and we've already talked about the powerfulness of the water bottle, and I picked it up and I threw it at my husband. Do you think that's targeted, or do you think that's reactive? Yeah, reactive. Could be targeted certain areas, right? Yeah.
You're talking about your spouse, you got it.
Yeah. So yes, it's reactive. It's emotional state. I kind of get what I have, and then I'm so spare of the moment. When we start to get into strangling, beating, stabbing, raping, shooting, bombing, those are ones that take pre-planning. Those are ones that take that targeted violence. The only time we see kind of those, maybe one intersection here where they kind of overlap, is generally a scenario that some of you guys actually deal with in terms of different cases that you see. So if I was to say somebody might start off as fighting, hitting objects, and then they transition to strangling, beating, raping, killing. Do you guys know what type of cases that you would see that would fit kind of this? It would start off as reactive and maybe might go into a targeted, based on what I said. They started off as beating, hitting somebody, and then it moves to strangling. Domestic violence, yes. So that's what we see in terms of violence, when it could be not only aggressive at the same or reactive, but it could also be targeted. That's really the only time that we kind of see both. So follow me. We're going to talk about cats, but there's a reason. So does anybody have a cat in here? Okay, cat's name? Piper. Is Piper a male cat or a female cat? Okay, so Piper. All right, so we have Piper. Piper she does not like dogs.
That's true.
Hates dogs, in fact. Piper is, at home or wherever, and a dog comes across to her and corners her in a corner. How is Piper gonna react? Can you describe Piper for me? So this cat hates dogs. She's now been cornered by a dog. What is some of the behaviors? What is that she's gonna mimic? So what is it, screeching? Hissing, okay. Big. She's gonna puff up, like swat. Yep. So nails are gonna be out. What about flatten ears? Great. What about the mouth? Yeah. Okay. So here's Piper. You guys described Piper. You didn't even know Piper, yet you described her, because Piper is reacting to the dog. And why do you think Piper is going to puff up, do her claws, sound all nasty? Why do you think Piper's doing that? Yeah, be like, don't mess with this kitty. Like, you have picked the wrong kitty to mess up, because they don't want to get into a fight. They don't want to get into an altercation. So Piper is very much reacting to her environment. Okay, let's still go with the cat theme here. And we'll do this video. Some of you have seen it, some of you have not. I'm still gonna play it because I love it. And I still think it's relevant. So this is Pinky, not Piper. This is Pinky, and Pinky's probably honestly dead by now, because this video was like 1980s, maybe early 90s. But let's watch this and see if, I was gonna say Piper, to see if Pinky is targeted or reactive.
Yeah, hold on. Go. This is Pinky. He's a male cat, domestic short hair. He's available for adoption. He's pet of the week, Placer County Animal Shelter. He's a very loving cat.
Hang on to us, please. Oh, here. Pinky.
Pinky.
Pinky. Whoa.
Well, we got a wildcat on our hands. Pinky, settle down, bud. Careful, Cole. Careful. Why don't I get a catch pole? Somebody get a catch pole. Just set it over. Get a catch pole.
Catch our pole to get him?
Yeah, because I'm not going to grab him. Oh, Dude.
I think it's tied up in there.
Yeah,
Take it from there. You got him back? You got him there.
So yeah, there's a couple of takeaways here. One of it, so the question is Pinky is Pinky targeted or is Pinky reacting to the environment? Yeah, some people say both, but yes, Pinky is definitely reacting to the environment. In fact, Pinky is telling us a number of ways, like, do not do this. I don't like any of this. Don't like any of it at all. Number one, I have seen this in Salem, and I know people in Portland still, but do this. But I think a general rule of thumb is cats don't like being on leashes. Like,
Right?
like don't put no cat that doesn't want to on a leash. Some cats are kind of like dogs and can be on leashes, but Pinky is not one of them. But Pinky was definitely saying do not do this. Don't also put me in a box, right? But yeah, Pinky was definitely reacting to his or her environment, and that's what that was the message behind Pinky. Same thing with people. Again, it's not really like, hey, describe what somebody looks like that does that. Oh, they have a tail. No, obviously not. We use cats as an example because I think they provide a good visualization. But same thing with people. People that are reacting to things, they're going to be loud. They're going to puff up. They're going to be like, emotional, like try to get me, attention's on me. They're going to react by punching because it's very an emotional state. So they're reacting to their environment. So now we're switching gears to targeted. So let's say Piper is on a farm. You live on a farm now. Welcome to rural America. And so Piper, you live on a farm and Piper sees a mouse. Piper loves herself some mouse, right? So what does Piper look like when she loves mouse? And she's in this field. It's a nice sunny day. What does Piper look like? Crouch down. Great. Quiet. Stealthy, maybe even people say. What about ears?
Ears are up toward the target.
What? Because what? What is Piper doing? Listening, right? Listening, and obviously hearing for animals is really, really good. What about Piper's tail?
It's flicking.
Yes, flicking, right? So you guys all describe, this is Piper, you all describe Piper like this, okay? It's very patient, very methodical, very fixated on her target. So maybe this isn't Piper, but but yes, people that are looking to do targeted violence are going to be the same in terms of their behavior. They're not going to be like, hello, look at me. They're not going to want to attract so much attention to them. They're not going to puff out and be like, I am a big threat, because they don't want to be seen as a threat. They want to be quiet. They want to lurk in the shadows, and they want to kind of be away from the limelight because they want to plan and to carry out their attack. So think of these things and simulate them with what those cats look like and what's targeted and what's more reactive. Real quick here, we have about an hour. In terms of reactive, there's usually an absence of planning associated with an emotional state. I told you that. It's usually that cat or that person feels like they're under immediate threat. So like Piper with the dog. There's usually a low or moderate injury in terms of this type of violence. But whereas we get to targeted violence, it's more pre-planned, more premeditated. There's usually significant lethality. So a lot of people get injured and it's usually significant. So, okay, let's take another 10-minute break. This will be our last break. So let's take our last break, stretch. Let's keep the door closed if everybody has badges, and then we'll finish up the last part of this class.
That's a Multnomah County Courthouse legend.
Yeah, that guy. Yeah, frequent flyer. Is his name Roger?
Clarence,
Yeah.
Roger. Roger's like his middle name.
Oh, gotcha.
I thought Rolando. I think it's Clarence Roger Rolando.
Does he like, what's his deal? Does he escalate or is he?
No, he doesn't
He
get
has a
aggressive.
TBI,
Mm,
and so he doesn't remember a lot of things.
So literally repeat.
He comes
Yep.
back because
Yes.
He comes in for the
Yeah,
same thing
okay,
over and over and
okay.
over again.
Yep.
I know. Yes, for so many copies and.
Yeah. And he's like,
I've been here 2.5
it's like
months and.
every department, right? Like we all.
Yeah, cause I got a Monday.
Yeah. Yeah.
He didn't come in with
But he's got
a,
violence. I don't think he has a stalking order against him.
I don't even know him. Yeah.
I think he was violent.
Yeah.
That wasn't long ago.
It's just scary when you hear that first time.
Well, yeah, when you have a traumatic brain injury.
Gosh.
He didn't come in with ammunition, I think, 6 months ago or 8 months ago.
Oh, no. You're like, no, we're actually not doing that. Yeah, been there, done that. Oh, it's sad. Frequently. Oh, it's sad. Oh, gotcha.
Writing it.
Oh,
Bring a treat if you want.
okay,
I need to send him the email clearly.
okay.
No, I did. I sent him an email that said.
No, but you said the food thing would be.
No, I sent him a follow-up one. I did. Yeah, I did. I said, don't worry about food,
Oh, I
we're covering it.
didn't
You
get
can
it.
bring a treat if you want, but we're gonna have to see the sugar.
Yeah, I
See it out the window.
Oh, yes, let me see this.
You left it.
You said it, I didn't get an email.
You didn't? I'll have to look again.
So it's literally like.
Yeah,
right
there's that
there.
parking lot right there.
See my car, see it up, right there, yeah.
I
This
used
this
the
lot
parts
right here.
underneath
It is really close, huh?
over there.
Very close. It's very
It's
close.
fine.
It's $12 a day.
That's what they said. They're like, it's so cheap.
I have a higher
Like,
tolerance for.
That's funny.
I bet you
There's like a
you're-
hierarchy in parking too, like, you know, if you get
Where's
here early,
the,
you want the one on the end.
They would find
Oh, under the.
secure guarded parking lot.
I know, I signed up for that new one. It's
$12
under
a
$12.
day.
Yeah.
$12 a day, yeah. Well, $12.10 a day for
Is that one of the new ones?
The Douglas.
We're starting to get one as of
I don't like
They
the.
pay $77 to park a few blocks away.
Yeah.
That's very.
Is that a year?
But it's pretty close, and walking here is.
like, this is on 240 or something like that. Like,
So what is your stipend that you're
we're
gonna
getting
get?
like $50.
Yeah, but I was paying for parking for almost 20 years downtown. And this is the first time that people have been on the way to having kind of, here you go, the other courts don't have to pay for parking generally.
That's
They-
crazy. And your position, it's not like, so if you're whatever position, you don't get paid extra, because it's all obviously universal, so. it's
Yeah,
like-
there's no like metro differential.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's really good, yeah.
That's crazy.
Only the judges get parking paid for.
Yes,
basically,
yeah. That's, I mean, it is nice and close. I do like that as far as accessibility. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as far as stuff that I've seen down there, mostly it's just people sleeping.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
think someone saw someone like dismantling a stolen motorcycle in between some like, there's some like, shipping containers.
Yeah, you're like,
Store-
I don't care,
that's in
cool.
for storage.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're like, cool. Whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to do. Go forth and conquer. Just don't mess with my car. or
Yeah,
me.
exactly.
I'll stay with my secure, buildings and patrol.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, man, parking. Yikes.
Kind of capacity is that place out?
It's pretty good. It's small, but there's, I mean, I don't know, it's like 3 or 4
It's just
cars.
open air from what I can see, right?
Yeah,
A
it's
rather
like,
classic
there's
Portland
there's
maneuver the other day of
You
a
did?
person walking down the street with
Well,
Like,
but
it's
it's not like
actively
level.
carving a broomstick into a spear. So they not only had, a knife, but they're crafting a spear as they're walking. I was in my car, so I was like,
You're like,
well, I'm not
whoa.
having to try to figure out how I'm gonna take a different route around that.
You're like, I am just going to, go.
They seemed pretty calm while they were doing it, but still.
They're talking about here in terms of like their policy and like somebody came in with like a wizard staff
Mm-hmm.
and they're like, well, they're saying it's their cane, so like, can we make it's kind of just an interesting, like, it could be a weapon, obviously, so.
Yeah, it could be done with a
Oh,
long staff
yes.
like that, yeah.
Yeah, I'm talking about like, not like your traditional cane, like
Yeah.
a wizard staff.
Yeah. 6-foot-long wizard staff with crystals attached.
Because the crystals are just an illusion that it's actually a wizard staff, you
Right.
know?
Another word for
What gives
crystals
it the magic?
Yes.
Another word for crystals is rocks, right? Like they have a stick with a rock on the
Yeah,
end.
exactly.
Yeah, he's like,
Rock.
come on.
She attacked a landlord tenant guy, an attorney.
Actually, that's next round.
You know, in the jail, there's a lot of the murders, like obviously, like they murdered somebody, but like morally, like kind of the person got murdered was like kind of an asshole, like up until the murdering. You know what I mean?
I did a trial, came back to trial.
This is the better. I don't have to answer a public phone. That was like so cute. I'm still 8 to 5. I just start my week on Sunday, which is nice. Your supervisor's not in. There's no court. There's no like deadline. It's kind of nice. Parking is also only $5 on the weekends. The smart part.
And I'm like, that's cold. Their little opening.
Yeah.
I wondered if it was because I was wearing black. I wasn't moving, really. But it's, that's not very efficient.
Do the majority of you guys get off at 5? I know that some, like some people have different schedules. For the most part, 5. They're like, we work swing shift. I'm like, oh, at the jail. Got it. Got it. She responded. Well, I don't know, when was 32 weeks ago? She was on 32 weeks ago. 2 weeks is. But it doesn't really come out.
was directing Starbucks to reopen the one on Morrison Street because they allegedly closed it because of union activity. Need another one. Bring it back.
They still have the one just up the road. I think they closed it. It was like 2 months up.
Yeah. Yeah, there's only the one on like around like the other opposite corner from the post office.
Second and
Yeah,
Main.
Second and Main, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
More than Jefferson's gone.
They kept breaking the windows and replacing them with different.
Okay, we're almost there. Let's get started just for sake of time. So we have a couple of things to wrap up about threat assessment in terms of, we'll talk about the pathway to violence and what that looks like. We'll talk a little bit about leakage, and that is in form of a threat assessment, what leaks out to the media that we can all use and we can all report if we see something that's serious. And then we'll talk about run, hide, fight, and that will be the end of everything that I have for my presentation. So the data is showing, and we'll talk about the pathway to violence, but the data is showing that if we get a threat, obviously not all threats lead to mass destruction. We get a lot of pseudo threats, we get a lot of uncomfortable messaging, we get a lot of different variety of stuff in the courts. What I would tell you is if you get something, and I tell this to the judges, if you get something that you're like, this is weird. I mean, it's not threatening, but there's something odd about it, just report it. Report it to Levi Yandel. He'll look into it. Definitely if there's some kind of threat, because there is stuff and there's some information that maybe law enforcement know and that you might have just maybe a small piece to that puzzle. I think that things are getting underreported just in general, and I think Portland is doing some underreporting, and I think it is important for a couple different reasons. I think if there's something that happens and it's a safety concern, if we want it to be fixed, we have to show some kind of numbers. We have to show some kind of data. And the best way to do that is reporting. I know that Barbara, the TCA, she has met with PPB and she has provided them documents and documents of all the on this date and time, on this date and time, on this date and time, to show them we have some security concerns around our building. And the chief is not going to be like, yeah, she comes with concerns and she's got no data to support it. She's got no incidents to say this is what's occurring. Likely, they're probably not going to, I wouldn't say like disconcern that, but I think you have more weight if you have more reporting. And certainly if there's stuff that's going on in your areas and you are doing some of those reports and you're like, second floor, they're getting a lot of activity because it's high volume. And maybe that translates into maybe we put a deputy full-time on the second floor. Those conversations have been had. I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen, but I'm saying if we report some of these incidents and these issues, maybe there's some kind of common ground or some common thread, and that you guys can work together to make some of these things more safer. It was already recommended by one of your, it was a supervisor. I don't know her name, but she was so feisty and I loved her, and you guys probably all know her. But she was like, she challenged Deputy, or rather Sergeant Roldan, and she was like, what? She's like, yeah, all the calls go on the second floor. And this is why I was saying second floor people, if you're working there. And she was like, why? I don't know. Why don't you just put maybe a deputy assigned to the second floor? If all the calls are going there, doesn't that make sense? I loved her feistiness. I don't think that they're magically going to put somebody there on the second floor, but Sergeant says, I will see what I have. I'll see what resources we have. We can have these conversations later. And maybe it is about like during this window of time, this is when we need somebody there. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if we don't report these things, then likely we likely won't get some of the asks that we want.
That would be very nice.
Yeah.
Start reporting everything.
Yeah. And I told Neil, I was like, get ready for it, because, you said reporting and you wanted it. So be careful what you wish for, my friend. So the data is supporting in terms of if we see somebody as law enforcement that's actively planning, prepping, getting weapons, rehearsing and recruiting, super serious. Like this is very serious. This is a very serious, could be a very serious attack. So when we look at on the pathway to targeted violence, this is what I'm talking about here, and I don't expect you guys to be experts in this, but this is kind of how it happens. There is some kind of grievance, and it kind of stair steps, and it kind of keeps going. So let's use this as an example. And maybe I'm alone in this, but I've had many grievances before, which I'm sure you guys all have had lots of grievances. And let's just use an example of me and my boss. So I go in and I talk to my boss. He's giving me an eval, and he gives me a very poor eval. I don't think that I deserve that grade or that marking for that particular category. And I have a grievance. Okay, that's what a grievance is. So in my head, I'm thinking that SOB, I'm going to get him. I want to hit him in the face. I want to punch his lights out. I want to do this. I have now moved on to violent ideation. Do we have these things? And I'll admit them for myself. Do we have these things? And does this mean I'm going to prepare for attack and do all these other things? No. Everybody can have a grievance, and they can have a violent ideation. It's when we start doing some other things that gets them on this pathway to violence. So that's why it's very important to report, to notice, to do all these things, because the data is also showing is if we can circumvent some people in these stages, and we can circumvent some mass things from happening, getting them intervention, getting them help, getting them the resources they need. Again, it's not all the time works in this way, but so let's just use my grievance, my violent ideation, and I say that, we've all had these thoughts in our head, or maybe I'm the only one that has had these thoughts in my head. So we use the attack with my boss, let's say. And now I am researching I am like, I want to hit him with a baseball bat. So that's my plan of attack. So then I start researching what bats are most effective. I start looking online to see people hitting each other with bats. So now I'm doing all this research, right? So I'm now going into the research and planning attack. So I have that. Now I'm going to go to, say, Dick's Sporting Goods, and now I'm going to get myself a bet. And I'm going to look for this greatest bet. And next, I'm going to go, and I know that my boss goes to Starbucks 9 o'clock on Liberty and Main, and I am going to go there, and I'm going to see if he notices me. I'm going to get close, because I'm going to do this attack at Starbucks at 9 o'clock. So do you understand how this could escalate, and how, as it goes further and further, it could get, obviously, the likelihood of somebody doing or carrying out the attack, if they keep going on this step, is actually pretty great. They say that when somebody's at a probing and a breaching area, they will most likely carry out this attack. So we need to watch this. Obviously, this can go up, it can go down, but this is what we're seeing in terms of threats. Talk about leakage. Here's the best example that I could tell you about leakage when it comes to threat assessment. So is anybody familiar with the Smith Rock case? Tumalo case is also the Cragen Classic. This occurred October 20th of this year. Is anybody familiar with this case at all? Okay, so it is an active case, just as a heads up. I like to tell everybody that. It obviously has not gone through the legal process, but it will be tried in Deschutes County. So here's the case, and this isn't any secret squirrel information. This is what the media had reported, and when I was doing some research, and I had known about this through threat assessment. So this happened here locally. So on October 20th, ex-girlfriend of a person named Sampson reported to PPB, I was going to say OPB, PPB regarding some concerns that she had with her ex-boyfriend, Sampson. So she is getting all this communication via email. And it's not just like, hey, I plan to do this. It trickles, it escalates. So what had happened, what's really important about Sampson is a week prior to this event, he has 2 kids and an ex-wife in Michigan. And the judge just ruled on that case, in his divorce case. So he lost custody of his girls, and he now has to pay, because of the judgment, he has to pay his ex-wife $2,600 a month. He's lost his job. On top of that, he was ordered to sell his Portland house. He was a resident in Portland, was ordered to sell his Portland house and then give some of the proceeds to this ex-wife. So when we looked at that chart and we looked at all those things that people value, and we had talked about the same thing that we fear losing, just think of all the things that I just mentioned that I'm plucking or is being plucked away from this guy. And so again, that doesn't mean that somebody is going to go down a violent path, but this is the story for this one. So girlfriend, ex-girlfriend, gets messages, and he's talking about violence. He's talking about getting weapons, and he had already had some weapons. And coupled with a day goes by or something like that, and now she comes home, and he was an avid or is an avid rock climber, hence the reason the target attack for this his plan. And then he was also an avid skier. So she comes home and she has all of his equipment. He dropped it all off. It's everything that he loves in terms of what his passions are. If people are doing that, if they're giving away things that they value or hold value, and that really to me means that they're not looking for the future. That could be a suicide thing. That obviously could be a homicide thing. But take note of these things. And this is why it's important to document and to report it if there are some serious concerns. So she, coupled with that, she also gets some communication from him that he says something to the effect of, wouldn't it be so easy to shoot a bunch of rock climbers at this event? It's called the Cragen Classic. It's a national event. It's very well known, and they go to different locations. So October, it happened to be here in Oregon. And so she gives all this information. She tells PPB like she's supposed to. PPB, they try to find him, and they actually locate him or have information that he's in Deschutes County already. So in close proximity to this event that's about to occur, he's already made statements that wouldn't it be cool to kill people in this event. So obviously police intervene. PPB contacts Deschutes, and Deschutes finds him, locates him, looks in his vehicle, and he's got a whole arsenal of many different weapons, ballistics, ammunition, things like that. So this is a successful example of leakage that worked, and that I believe, again, this person is not tried, is not convicted, but to me had all the makings or all the ingredients for a disaster. So having people report it is huge. Questions on that? So we talked about this, inhibitors, and when we slowly do those, looking away to the future, we talked about that. Again, this is not the end all be all, but they are factors. So real quick, and I already talked about it before, if you get any kind of inappropriate communication, please report that. Obviously, if you get any kind of direct threats, veiled threats, anything like that, please report it. We do have Deputy Yandel who handles all those, and other people in his absence as well. This is just some anti-judicial literature. So this person was a sovereign citizen who created this like, hey, I want to arrest all these judges. There's been stuff in the media about different sovereign groups wanting to arrest the attorney general, the governor, things like that. So if you are opening the mail and you come across this, please let law enforcement know. Okay. The next slide is going to say break. Obviously, we're not going to break because we're going to power through the last point of the presentation. But before we do that, what can you guys do with your own power to make your own work conditions safer? We've talked about some of them, but what can you do? The onus and the responsibility is you to make your working conditions better.
Be observant.
Excellent. Thank you for participating. I know it's late in the day. Yes, be observant, call things out, alert. What else? Code words. Excellent.
I was just going to say
Yes. Anytime there's an event that and I've been involved in some interesting events throughout my career, anytime there's an event and we do like a debrief afterwards, it's always communication. There's always a breakdown in communication. So I cannot overemphasize this more. Communication is key. So making sure everybody's on the same sheet of music, you guys do code words, and if you have a problem with somebody, let your coworkers know, hey, I dealt with this person, this is how he treated me, because it helps them prepare if they have to meet this individual, and if they have as much information as you do. What else?
Having the plan and maybe even acting it out. I think the last time I did this training, one of the things I remember is he's like, when you're under duress and then you're in an emergency, you go to the lowest point of your actual practicing of your plan.
Yes.
I'm not saying that right, but
I know what you're saying.
You have a plan, you think you're going to be able to do it. You're like, okay, I'm going to do this and this and this. But when you're stressed, the only thing you really actually do is what you've already practiced doing.
Right. So the more you practice, the more you train. And I'm not saying like practicing and training mean to do like full team exercises, things like that. It could be something so simple as tabletop exercises and talking through things and doing things like that. So yes, you will revert back to your training. The more you train and the more frequency you do, the better options and the better chance of success you're going to have if you're put in that situation. Okay, great. No break. We're moving forward real quick. Active shooter, what I want you to take away from this is just like we had talked about the difficult or angry person, the only thing that these people have in common is they committed mass acts of violence. There's nothing really common about these. And so same thing with identifying difficult people. We have to look at behavior because they don't share a lot of similarities. You know, we have male, female, different race, everything like that. So pay attention to the behavior. Here's a couple of facts. They always do reporting. FBI always does reporting in terms of a year behind. So we're always a year behind. These are 2022 stats. They are already, you know, obviously these are the 22 stats, and then we'll get the 2023 stats later. So just quickly what those stats look like for the year. Active shooter, again, I like to try to get away from that, is one or more individuals actively engaged or attempting to kill people in a populated area. We talked about this when we start to go to the run, hide, fight, is the data is showing that the majority of the active threat situations, you guys know what an active shooter is or active threat is based off that definition, and that's how they define it and that's how they record it, is actually happening in commerce, which they believe is, you know, like shopping, open areas, things like that. That's where they're seeing actually most of the shootings. There is some workplace violence, obviously, that's why I'm here. Schools, churches, things of that nature, but overall, majority of the data is saying that it's more like commerce, more shopping area. These are the most deadliest mass shootings in modern U.S. history. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, just to say that it's all over. And unfortunately, I had to add another one, and that was the Maine shooting, where 10 people or 18 people were killed. Okay. So just real quick, the only thing I want you to take away from this is Columbine changed a lot of things for us in terms of law enforcement's response. And it also changed a lot for threat assessment, because when people ask, when did Columbine start? A lot of people will say January, will say April 20th, 1999. That is incorrect. It started way back in 1996 when they started doing these posts, started obtaining weapons. They started getting skills on how to make a bomb, things like that. So that's what we're talking about, the leakage. It changed law enforcement in terms of our response. And the response today for law enforcement, just so everybody knows, is if there is an active threat or an active shooter situation, we are not waiting. We know that time is of the essence, that we are trained to, if it's me, I'm going in. We used to say, wait for a buddy, wait for somebody else, but because when we talk about active shooter situations, they're very, very short in time. It's about like average on 4 minutes. It's very, very short. So with that being said, we have Uvalde, and that obviously, I feel like we kind of went back in time with that one. I'm not sure exactly what went wrong, but the response is active shooter, you go in, you take action, you stop, and you eliminate the threat. We're going to skip this one because I do want to end the presentation with the run, hide, fight. Has everybody heard of run, hide, fight? Okay. Yes, yes. Okay. I like it because I kind of thought maybe this was universal. There's a lot of different acronyms out there to do the same thing. I like run, hide, fight because it tells you exactly what to do. It's very simple, very boiled down. And we like to teach it in that manner. So in an active threat or an active shooter situation, we want you to run as your first option. If you have the ability and the option to run and you have a safe path to go, we want you to take this option. So you have to know you're building the best. You have to know if you have an escape route, and we want you to get out of the way, get out of the area. We don't want you to be a victim. We don't want to have multiple victims. So get out. And when I say get out, just leave. Go run as far as you can until you think that you're in a clear line of safety. And we'll talk about what you should do once you're in that. So a couple different things. Just know that a moving target is much harder to hit than a static target. So something that's not moving is easy to hit, and something that's moving is a lot harder to hit. Does that make sense? Okay. So now that you know that a moving target is much harder to hit than a stationary target, you have to drive the bus. You have to incorporate some kind of movement. And when I say that, if you're talking about a hallway, so envision a hallway with me, and if you're running just right down the line, do you think that's any different than staying stationary? So meaning if I was running just straight like this, and bad person was behind me and had their weapon out, drawn, and they were on target, do you think I'd be a hard target to hit? No. Why is that?
Staying in the center.
Yes, I am moving, right? It's great. I am moving, so it's a little bit harder, but I'm not moving enough because it's almost like I'm stationary. So, like over here, motioning, you need to incorporate some lateral movements. So if you're moving, drive the bus. Continue to do that because, and again, it's like, do those lateral movements. The idea is to get the heck out of there, so don't be like ping-ponging on their friggin', walls or anything like that. We do want you to get out of there, but incorporate some of that lateral movement, because when I had talked about action versus reaction and how it was kind of a detrimental to you or could be in terms of dealing with somebody that's angry or hostile, well, now it's going to work in our favor because we know that action is quicker than reaction, right? So if I had my gun out, which I'm not going to put my gun out, and I had my sights and my finger was even on the trigger, and I had decided that I was going to fire, do you think whatever I'm firing at could move if it had the ability to move? Do you think it could go faster than me pulling the trigger? What do you think? It's not Matrix. I'm not talking about Matrix stuff. Some people say yes, and it's absolutely yes, because now we know these things. If I am moving, that person has to then go, and if I'm that person, oh, that person moved. I need to reorient my sight. I need to get a new sight picture. I need to do all these different things, and it takes time. Again, it's seconds, but you have to drive the bus. You got to keep moving because that person has to react to your movement. Does that make sense? Okay, so drive the bus, incorporate some lateral movements, and try to get the heck out of there. That's really the big point to this. Now, could somebody, and this is not a technical term, but could somebody spray and pray? Do you guys know what I'm talking about there? Where they just shoot aimlessly? Yes. But what I would tell you here is I would rather get shot by an unintentional round than somebody's an intentional round. So meaning, like if they were trying to target my vital organs or something like that, I would rather get hit like in the arm accidentally because they sprayed and prayed. Make sense? Okay. It says leave your belongings behind. There has been shootings, unfortunately, this is where we learn all of this data from, where they're finding if you're in a situation and you have your personal items right here, a lot of times people will grab them. Great, okay. People are gonna do it naturally. Just don't go back to an area and grab your stuff, grab your purse, grab your keys, grab your phone. Don't do any of that because we really do want you to get out of there. It says try to use cover concealment while fleeing. Just know that cover stops whatever the threat is. Concealment just hides your movement or is somewhere you can hide. So like if we're talking about a gun, any kind of gun really, if I flipped over this table and was behind it, would this be cover or would it be concealment? Concealment, yes, because this is not going to stop bullets. Like bullets are going to go straight through this table. Something like cover, if we're talking about a gun, this would be cover, concrete, okay? Again, the idea is to get out of there, so you don't spend too much time on that. I just wanted you guys to be aware of it. So keep going. Don't go to your normal evacuation route. You really just need to go, and once you're in a safe area, you need to call 911. Briefly explain what's going on. Try to give as much information as you can. The last bulletin says, tell how many people are in the building. Again, this is, you don't know, you never really know how many people are in this building. So just give the best information that you can, that you have available at the time. So let me ask you this. If there is an active threat situation that, let's just say, occurred here, what do you guys think about pulling a fire alarm? I want to talk about it. There's some pros and cons.
Don't do it. You're just going to walk away with targets.
Okay. If you didn't hear them, you're going to have a lot of targets because people are going to be coming out of areas. They're going to try to go to one specific area. Some people, and again, I don't think there's any right or wrong answer, just know what each option presents. There has been active shooter situations where the shooter or the suspect or whatever you want to call them, they will pull the fire alarm. And it's for that. They want to get people to gather in one area because these people know that they're under a very short time constraint. They know that once they start stabbing, shooting, whatever, they know police are coming, right? So they know they have a very small window to carry out their attack. Most people and most suspects of this nature just want to do the biggest bang for their buck. So if you do have a fire alarm that goes off, just what I'm going to tell you is just use your senses. Like, is this a normal fire alarm? Am I getting other indications? Am I getting notifications that it's not just our standard one? In fact, I don't smell smoke. Somebody said they heard a loud noise here. Just use everything that you can. Use all your senses. And if you really feel like it's not a fire alarm, or there's any kind of danger, please don't go to your normal fire evacuation area and do that. Some people say, hey, I'm going to pull the fire alarm because it does get people out. It gets people movement. Well, I've been in fire alarm drills, and it's like, okay, got to get my coat. It's raining outside. I'm going to go back and get my umbrella. I understand this, but what I would challenge you is if you do hear the fire alarm, I'm not saying don't get out of the building because the building could be on fire, but use some of your other senses that tell you. And if it's different, then you might need to alter or change your route.
Do we have fire
We
alarm?
don't have
We don't
manual
have
fire
a-
alarms.
You guys don't have fire alarms at all?
Well, not
Not
manual.
in this building.
Okay, so like the public couldn't like pull a fire alarm or something.
Also by floor only.
Yeah,
Like
Interesting.
only certain ones evacuate.
Yeah, it's five, like, was it 5 floors at a time or something like that?
Who has access to
Don't know.
to do a fire alarm? Like,
It's all triggered by smoke or heat.
interesting.
The sheriffs can manually do it too.
Oh, that makes sense.
Okay, so maybe people are not gonna, in your building, people are not gonna pull the fire alarm like in the old school sense. But they could start a fire.
Sure.
They
Blow
could,
your vape right on the
but it
spot.
won't be the whole building.
Yeah,
though,
it'll
but
just-
yeah.
It'll just be floor specific.
Yeah,
Okay,
If you have a
The 5
jury-
floors will.
If you have a room full of jurors, I mean,
yeah.
150 jurors.
But yeah, people don't exit the building, they just go down.
Up or down,
to,
yeah.
like down 4 floors or something like that.
Depending on, what's going on.
Yeah.
Have
Well,
you guys
that's-
ever
that's
had a
the-
full evac of the building?
Yeah, when we
Yes,
first
the first
opened,
one.
we did one.
Okay,
It sucked. It took forever.
okay.
There's supposed to be another random one coming.
At least there's more exits.
Okay.
Well, they should do a full evac though. They should.
That's what the email said. We
Okay.
can't tell you the date, but they're
Just
doing another.
be
full
aware of what's going on around you. Don't go to your normal evacuation routes if you have other indications that something else is happening.
Well, and also when there's an alarm goes off, it releases all the locked doors too. It
Yeah.
releases all the ones that we don't have access to, so you can get out, or at least the exit through the DA's office on our
Yeah.
floor and that kind of stuff.
And the 7th floor one too.
Yeah.
And then the elevators shut down
Yes.
too, right?
Yep.
Okay, so these are things that you have to think about. If it is somebody starts a fire or does some kind of thing with the alarm, like that's gonna I guess it's might change some of your routes that you guys can take. Hopefully, obviously, it never happens. But I mention it because people say, "Hey, what about the fire alarm?" But your building is a little unique. But what I would tell you is still, if you're doing these things, just pay attention to what's going on around you. If it seems like it's not a fire alarm and you're getting other indications, you really need to do other things other than go to the planned evacuation route. Okay. Hide. Okay. So if you can't run, you need to hide. Some people are not a big fan of the hide part of this, and I'm just saying it is an option. Okay. So if you can't run, they're saying you need to hide. So the first thing in there is, if possible, lock or barricade your location. Why would this room be a particular challenging maybe room to lock or barricade?
So many doors.
Yeah, you have so many flipping doors. Like it would be really challenging to do it. Is it impossible? No, but just know that it's not the best room to do that. In this situation, you're hiding. Call 911 if possible. 911 does have the ability to do text as well. So you can text them as well. In this situation, if you don't know the deputy's number, I guess downstairs on your cell phone, I still say call 911. Obviously, if you know the number, call them directly and let them know. But 911 is also good. Everybody's coming, by the way, in this situation. So silence electronic devices. Obviously, that's your cell phone. Turn off lights This was kind of an old adage because now we have like motion sensors, so it's a little bit more harder to turn off lights. I'm not telling you to like destroy lights to turn them off, but if you can, turn off the lights. Last part I've already talked about, and the reason why they think there's value in hiding and barricading, and we'll talk about barricade, what you can do in the next slide, because of this path of their time constraints is very, very short. They know that that the cops are coming, so these suspects are choosing the path of least resistance. Here's what I mean by that. So somebody comes into a building, let's say a shopping mall, and they start firing. And there's no specific target in mind. They just want to do the biggest bang for their buck. So if they're going through the mall and they have a store here and that store has barricaded or has made it difficult for them to get in, the data is showing that they're not going to spend the time to go into that door because, again, that path and that time, they're going to move on and they want to do the biggest bang for their buck. So the data is showing they're not going to try to spend as much time trying to get into that door, and they'll continue to go on and try to find other victims elsewhere. So that's why I think hiding is still relevant. Know that this is a game changer if the person is a target, a specific target. So if we're talking about, let's say, a boss, I use the boss analogy a lot. If we have a workplace violence or somebody that's been terminated or whatever reason, and the person has a lot of animosity towards that boss, and that boss's office is right here, and that boss had barricaded it or tried to barricade it, they will take the time to try to get into that because their source of all their, violence is for that specific person. Okay? So here's what you can do to barricade doors. There's some examples. Door stops are really great. They're pretty cheap and they're, for the most part, accessible. Same thing with furniture. We have a lot of furniture in a room. Again, somebody can, obviously get through that little chair fort there. This one I'm talking about up here. This one's going to be a little more challenging because the bar is, but that's kind of like your school one. We usually don't have doors like that anymore. But again, you just want to make it as more challenging as possible for that person to try to get in. The picture on the right up there, so those are for those doors that have that arm. So there's, and people have done it in practice. If you use some kind of lanyard, we all have lanyards, ties, things like that, electrical cord. And if you were to tie it, obviously not on the, he's kind of tying it over here where it's coming together. If you actually tie it on the wider spot, it'll prevent the door from opening if you have a door like that. You guys are with me so far on that door? Okay. Let's see what else. Why would that, I'm not saying that we couldn't barricade that door, but why would that door be a little troublesome to barricade for just an obvious reason?
It swings to the other room.
Yeah, it swings into the other room. That doesn't mean that we can't put like a chair or table in front of it, but just know that person just opens the door and then there it is. So.
It's also an air wall.
Yes.
Oh, it is.
Movable wall.
Oh, it is. Yes, it's a jury room. Yeah. Okay, so you can get in. You can get in a variety of reasons. Yes. This one just moves and then you can go right in.
Right.
Excellent. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Maybe say something like storage room or the AV closet there.
Yes. Yeah.
If all the doors open in a fire alarm, if I have to hide, I'm booking into one of the single-use bathrooms because you have the lock. It's got a big wooden door, and at least
no windows.
You'd have some hideability.
And this is where you have to know your area the best. Like, what are good hiding spots? What are good hiding areas? What makes sense? Again, in this situation, if you're in this one area, then you just have to do what's best. Like, obviously, if you have the ability to run, we want you to do that. But if you have to hide, it's also an option. Just know that if you, so say, for example, you hide and you have every indication, and some people say, when should I stop hiding? What do you guys think?
You get the all clear.
I love that. Who's they? Who's they that we're talking about? The what? Okay, okay. So you stop hiding when hide and seek, they found you. Yes, okay, the suspect. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but yes, maybe you stop hiding and then maybe you do something else that we're going to talk about next. What about, I heard police maybe, all clear. What's that? Yeah, so
Prove you're a first responder.
exactly, exactly. And
Police, open up.
yeah.
You don't know.
So what do you guys think on that one?
Bathroom.
What do you guys think? Don't know? Don't have any clue? You're gonna have to use your best judgment. Really, if you really truly don't know if that person, who that person is, and they're law enforcement, they will find a way to get in. I guarantee you. There are other ways that you could do it, and we talk about you can call 911 dispatch. I mean, these are things that take time. Again, this is when the threat's over with. But some people are saying, listen, I'm not going out of hiding. I did such a great job. I'm not doing it until I can verify that that person is a police officer. And then I will go out of hiding, or if they find me, I guess. But yes, okay, just things that I want you guys to think of. What about if you're hiding and all indication is that the shooter or the suspect or whoever you want to call them has moved on and they are, you know, they're in a different floor? What do you guys think about then? Still hide, or what other options could you have on the table?
Running.
Yeah, you can go back to running, right? You can, if you have a safe, and you know for sure, you have a safe way, always escape. We teach it in this way, but doesn't mean you can't go back and forth between all the options. We don't want you obviously just to start off fighting when you can run, and then we'll talk about that right here. So fight is the last option. So maybe if you're playing hide and seek and they find you, he finds you, she finds you, whoever the suspect is, this may well be your only option, okay? This is the last option, and we teach this for a reason, because it can be violent, right? A lot of people haven't trained in terms of combat and dealing with somebody that has a gun, and what I would tell you here is that it is survivable. You can do it, but it is the last option. So if you're in a group or if you're in a room with people and you have no other way to do it but fight, just know that everybody are not fighters. Not everybody is going to be on this plan. They're not going to be okay with it. We don't know how people are going to react into this situation. Sometimes we don't even know how ourselves are going to react. Some people do freeze up. What I would tell you is don't let that frozen person get in the way of you doing what you need to do to protect yourself. So put that person off to the side, have them go, maybe have them make a 911 call, I don't know. But just know that not everybody is going to participate for a number of reasons. So if you can overwhelm as a group, we talked about safety in numbers. Also, like if I was a lone assailant with a weapon and I encountered a group of people, it's very hard for me as the suspect, especially if it's a surprise attack and everybody is just going 100%, because that is the last option. So attack without warning. It says in here, and the only reason why I put it in here is because people have asked me in terms of weapons, and they said that they want to know what to do if they to gain control of a weapon. I'm not saying that this is for everybody, but what I'm saying is if you choose to gain control of the weapon, there are better times to do that. If you know what a malfunction is, or if somebody is firing and nothing's coming out and they're having issues, right? That's a malfunction, okay? That is a great time to attack. That might be a great time to grab the weapon if you choose to do so because it's not firing, right? Also, a magazine exchange. Again, I know you guys you don't need to know too much about weapons, but if they have a magazine and it falls out, the slide, if we're talking about a handgun, it goes back, it's cocked back, and they need to put another round or another magazine in. That's also a good time to go for a weapon if you choose to. Again, if you choose to. The other thing I tell people is, and it's very important, if you're going to do it, commit, go all in. If you're going to grab a hold of a weapon, if that weapon's slung, so we're talking about a rifle, a sling, if those who don't know, is just kind of like that loop, and it's attached to the weapon, and it hangs on the person, kind of like a big belt, if you will. So if it is a slung rifle and you grab it, their body is going to go with whatever what direction you're pulling them. Their whole body's going to go with that. So if you're going to commit, do it. If you're going to grab hold like a monkey, hold on. Number 3, make sure the hole is pointed away from you. Okay? Okay. There has been success. I have watched videos on it of people that are like, yep, I'm going to do it. I'm going to grab the weapon. Again, if that's the option you take, just know, obviously, those things. Also know that firearms, you could get burned and stuff like that. They are hot in terms of the slide. Your hands could get cut. Again, I'm just telling you, giving you all options out there. Okay, improvised weapons. What is an improvised weapon? What is an improvised weapon even available just to us in this very room? Chair. Yeah, we saw that today, right? We've talked about a lot of chairs. Water bottle. We've talked about water bottles. Cell phone. Pens. Garbage can. TV. Take the TV down. Yeah, this is your permission to do as much destruction as possible. No, I'm just kidding. Power cord, somebody says. So I had this gal, and I was like, girl, you need to see me after class because I don't know where your head is, but it's pretty dark. And I need to talk to you. She's like, yeah, this is what I would do, Jen. I was like, okay, what are you going to do? And she's like, I have aerosol, like spray disinfectant. And I was like, oh, okay. And I was thinking maybe you just spray somebody in the face. And then I have a lighter. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I don't even know where this is going. What movies are you watching? So, anyways. Yes, Aquanet. Is Aquanet illegal to possess inside the courthouse? No, I mean I don't know. A lighter?
You have a lighter.
Okay. All right. You gotta make do sometimes with what you have. Okay. All great things. You guys have mentioned a lot, but you have failed to mention my favorite item, and it is in this room. Fire extinguisher. Yes. Okay. For a couple different reasons, but okay. You have mentioned a lot of things, and they are legitimate. A weapon is a weapon. Whatever you have can be a weapon. When we talk about pens, scissors, letter openers, things like that, just know that in an adrenaline situation, your little fine motor skills, because it's your body's a way of protecting yourself, all your blood is going to start to go to your vital organs, okay? And these things that you do, all these fine movements, are going to be more like clubs, okay? I'm not saying that they're not great options. I'm not saying a letter opener is not a great option, but you got to be close to somebody. You got to stab, and you got to stab in certain areas in terms of being really effective. You got to have that kind of that personal relationship, or that personal, I guess, spatial boundaries, and you have to be very targeted with it. Okay, so that they are great things. So I always tell people, go caveman, go Gronk. Heavy, hit them over the head. So that's why I love the fire extinguishers. So I would challenge you, the fire department is like, oh my gosh, Jen. I like to know where all the fire extinguishers are in my area, because how much precision, how much training do you have to grab a fire extinguisher, and how much, any of that, strength, any of it, do you have to do that and swing it and hit somebody over the head with it and it being effective? Like, how much training you have to have? 0, right? Go heavy, go Gronk. You don't have to be precise. If you miss, swing again. So that is my favorite tool, something heavy, something big, something that will do the job. Okay, So say you grab the fire extinguisher, you hit somebody over the head. Some people said they would use it to spray, to disorient. Yeah, just know that those are all possibilities. But what if you were effective and you did that? And now what do? What other options do you have? That person's incapacitated on the floor.
Right.
Okay, somebody says get the gun, run. Yes, yes, okay. You have the option to run, right? Some people say, I'm going to take the weapon. I'm not saying to take it. I'm not saying to leave it. This is going to be your decision here. But what I would caution you on is if you are going to pick up anything, any weapon, displace it from you. Separate it from you. If we're talking about a handgun, put a handgun in a garbage can and come out of the building with your hands up because it's at least separated to you. Because you don't want to go out of a building in an active threat situation with a weapon in your hand. Correct. No, because officers are looking at hands. Their adrenaline is really high. Their job is to stop the shooter and to stop the threat. Yes, go ahead.
That like just happened in Israel. They had like at a bus stop, someone like started shooting people, and then you had an off-duty cop like killed the shooter, and then when the IDF showed up, they shot the civilian and killed him.
Yes, and we have seen that in shootings, and like plainclothes detectives like myself, we have to take a caution because we're not identified as a police officer. So if, say, for something happened in this building, people wouldn't know that. And if I had a gun and obviously was trying to stop a threat, you have to be very careful about that because of that very reason. That doesn't mean I'm not going to stop the threat, because that's my job and that's what I'm going to do. So yeah, just separate yourself from that weapon. If you want to hide it somewhere, hide it. If you don't want to pick it up at all, don't pick it up at all. Okay. So just be very careful. Don't put having any weapons in your hands as you're running out of a building. Okay, almost there. So people usually say, Jen, I'm not a fighter. I'm just not a fighter. I don't know how you're going to react in a situation. Don't know how I would react in a situation. I would hope that my training would kick in like I've done so many times, and that it would just be like second nature for me. But I would argue that any of one of you guys are fighters and can be fighters. So two things: adrenaline, high adrenaline. You can do superhuman human things that you never thought was possible with this adrenaline dump that you likely will experience in this event, because this is a significant event, coupled with the right motivation. So I like to say, take those two things and stack them in your favor, and you have to tell yourself, this is the last option. If I don't do X, I don't fight for my life, I am not going to get home to fill in the blank of what you love and what you cherish, whether that's your husband, your kids, your mom, whatever, fill in the blank. If you couple with that motivation, like, this is what's going to stop me from seeing my son, this is what's going to stop me from doing that, I think coupled with that, I think anybody truly can be a fighter. So I say, go Mama Bear, go Papa Bear, go Gronk. You can succeed. Just know that there are limitations, and hopefully you took away something from this class. And that's it. That's all I have.